in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The first time I met Julian Chen was during the 50th birthday celebration of that emperor uncle. On the Son of Heaven's birthday, the emperor held a banquet for hundreds of officials at Chengguang Hall in Jianzhong Palace, rejoicing with people and drinking longevity wine. That old uncle was considered a wise ruler in his youth, and the previous generations of emperors were not foolish either. Although in his old age he could not avoid the bad habits of emperors, he at least kept the ancestors' legacy intact. That birthday banquet was truly a feast of a peaceful and prosperous age. Julian Chen appeared amidst that drunken revelry. After the chaotic music and singing, a few leisurely scholars also composed some poems. My newfound emperor uncle, who appeared out of nowhere, had a beaming face and wanted to play the game of pitch pot in the main hall, designating a few young masters from important ministers' families. Julian, only 8 years old, stepped forward to bow without arrogance or flattery. Amidst the thunderous applause filling the hall, old Marquis Anding shook his head and smiled, telling the emperor that this brat acted arrogantly and needed stricter discipline. The emperor uncle waved his hand and laughed, saying that it was fine and that the Chen family had truly obtained a Kulin son. At that time, I was mesmerized by Julian's handsome, immature face and could not distinguish directions. I pulled the hand of Tristan Helion, who was feeding me rice, and chirped asking when he would ascend to the throne. Tristan Helion was 5 years older than me. He replied that if I kept talking about rebellion so loudly, next year we would not just be celebrating our old man's birthday, but also his death anniversary. I laughed and said in a childish voice that I was saying this in advance. After he became emperor, he must bestow Julian to me. Tristan looked at me in astonishment. If he recalled correctly, this body of mine hadn't even been weaned for 3 years. Everyone has dreams. Tristan accepted the embroidered handkerchief handed over by a nearby palace maid, and told me I should cure my drooling habit first. Furious, I kicked him. But I was only 4 years old then. My limbs were short, and kicking people was just like a child throwing a tantrum. Tristan was amused by me and teased me a few sentences. Meanwhile, a palace maid from Linhua Palace bowed and walked over. Lady Noble Consort wanted to take me back. Tristan's smile instantly vanished, but he did not hand me over to her. Instead, he stood up, held my hand, and left the seat. On the way back from Chengguang Hall, we did not say anything. Tristan's time travel luck was not as good as mine. My mother, who appeared out of nowhere, and the current emperor were cousins. Their affection could be called deep, but she had been frail since childhood. My father came from a humble background and died in battle 4 months before I was born. My mother was extremely grief-stricken. After struggling to give birth to me, she passed away. The current emperor remembered the sibling affection and pitied my tragic background, so he called me Princess Changlet and raised me under the care of Lady Noble Consort in the palace. Compared to the 5th Prince Tristan, the son of a lowly palace maid who grew up in the cold palace, right now, considering everything, I was indeed much nobler than him. The magnificent high palace walls cast heavy shadows under the moonlight upon us. Behind us were palace maids and guards. Eunuchs and wet nurses walked slowly behind. When passing the inner palace gate, Tristan picked me up. The wet nurse behind seemed a bit unhappy, but seeing me pout, she hurriedly retreated. I hugged Tristan's neck and whispered that he had only been here for a year. It was normal not to adapt, and he should wait until he cultivated his power well, then ascend to the throne as emperor. Tristan walked through the palace gate but did not put me down, asking if it wasn't good for him to be a leisurely prince. He asked if he really had to play the game of survival and seizing the throne. Humph, his eyes could not deceive me. He clearly wanted to be the emperor. I whispered into his ear that his father had already started refining pills and popping medicine, eating furnace ash every day. Sooner or later he would kick the bucket. I made empty promises again, telling him that when he became emperor, he must remember to bestow Julian to me. Tristan pinched my cheek, scolding me for having no ambition and telling me to broaden my horizons. He asked if one man was enough to satisfy me. I was extremely shocked and suddenly realized he was right. Why didn't I think of that? Brother was indeed worthy of being the one who would ascend to the throne. When I turned 5, I exerted my shameless persistence to beg the emperor uncle to let me enter the Imperial Academy to study. Just at that time the princes were also coming of age, and the emperor summoned the young masters of high officials of the same age into the palace as study companions. Therefore, on the first day I went to school, the the registrar placed a small desk for me next to Tristan. I was 5 years old. Julian was 9 years old, becoming my desk mate, sitting right in front of me. Tristan sighed while helping me arrange my brush and ink. He said he knew I came here for Julian. No way, I sweetly coaxed him. I told him I was afraid that hateful third prince would bully him in school, so I came to back him up. Tristan said nothing, just curled his lips. After a long while, he said it was useless anyway because with Julian's current status, he still could not look at him. It was the truth, compared to Prince Terence, who was raised under the knees of Lady Shoe Consort, who was currently favored. With Julian's status, naturally, he would be the study companion for Prince Terence. But Tristan's study companion was William Way, the son of the concubine of the Vice Minister of War, who wore the same split pants growing up with Julian, so they could at least establish some ambiguous relationship. I comforted Tristan by shouting the classic line from male-oriented novels. Don't bully the poor youth, 30 years east of the river. Hurry up and shut your mouth. Tristan used a brush to tap my small hair bun. He asked if I didn't feel ashamed. My male god was sitting right behind me. I immediately sat up straight, playing the role of a noble young lady in the deep palace. The Imperial Academy was divided into 6 halls and 5 departments. The main subjects were the 4 books and 5 classics. I must say I studied quite happily. After all, as someone who graduated from 9 years of compulsory education, I adapted well, let alone that I had studied from master's to doctorate degrees. At first, the chancellor teaching at the Imperial Academy only saw me as a mascot to be worshipped, teaching casually, but then discovered I actually had some talent, so he paid a bit more attention. In addition, Julian was naturally intelligent and basically always held the top position. I was a time traveler with a common disease. Seeing something displeasing made me want to show off. After studying for 2 months, my reputation as the 3-year-old prodigy had also created some fame, reaching the ears of that emperor uncle. Tristan followed the path of mediocrity, doing everything moderately. Actually, Tristan and I had discussed this. Tristan was a cold palace prince, unloved by father and mother, so he shouldn't be too prominent. Playing dumb to seek safety was the most important thing. I was different, to put it bluntly. A female in ancient times with a little talent posed no threat. When reaching the appropriate age, it could actually add points in the matchmaking market. Only a fool wouldn't make a profit when there is a bargain. It was just that one day after school at the Imperial Academy, when it was only the 2 of us, Tristan suddenly asked me if I wanted to be Wu Zetian. I took 3 seconds to remember who Empress Wu was, then I was shocked. It turned out in his heart I still had this ability. Emperors take turns. This year it is your family's turn. Tristan calmly used the words I often incited him with to reply to me. He asked if I wanted to do it. That seriousness was as if once I said I wanted to, he would immediately raise an army to rebel and honor me as the Empress Regnant. I used the brush to tap his head, asking if his brain ran off to play make-believe with me. I told him to hurry up and rise for me, quickly ascend to the throne and take me to live in luxury. Tristan broke his defense and started to go crazy. He said he did not want to try anymore. He wanted to find a sugar mommy to support him. I laughed loudly and hugged him tight, not mentioning that I actually knew he had just experienced an assassination attempt yesterday. Although the Imperial Academy was full of descendants of the royal clan coming to study, and the management was strict with rigorous discipline, ultimately there were still idiots who wanted to cause trouble. I said it was that damned arrogant and presumptuous Prince Terence. Even though we traveled through dynasties, school bullying has always been a typical problem. Although the victim being bullied was Tristan, the methods were very childish, swapping the homework Tristan submitted, and accusing Tristan of cheating during the exam. Tristan could endure it, but I could not. After all, I was small and favored by the emperor uncle. Everyone knew that when I was crying loudly in the cradle, only Tristan could coax me. The stupidest methods required the simplest, crudest ways of resistance. I cried and ran to the imperial stele of Shanzheng Hall, hugged the emperor uncle, and started wailing. Uncle. I cried that the 3rd prince pushed the 5th prince. Not right, I cried again. I cried that the 3rd prince bullied the 5th prince, and I conveniently wiped snot and tears on the emperor uncle. The emperor did not care about these small tricks, nor did he pay much attention. The storm ended with Prince Terence balancing the 4 books and 5 classics on his head and standing in a horse stance outside the window for 2 hours. It just implicated Julian a bit. He was not at the Imperial Academy much. Most of the time he had to follow his grandfather to the military camp for training. Just as he returned to be the study companion for Prince Terence, he had to be punished together. But standing in a horse stance for 2 hours was a piece of cake for him. I lay on the windowsill, sticking my tongue out at Prince Terence, who was angry enough to vomit blood, and Julian with his calm face. Sorry, young Master Chen. Although you are truly handsome, compared to my royal brother, the future emperor, my own brother is more important. I only studied at the Imperial Academy until I was 7. Firstly, because men and women should not touch, and secondly, because Tristan and Julian gradually grew up. They started getting busy with work, no longer having much time to focus on studying at the Imperial Academy. It was not interesting for me to go there alone. When I was 12, Tristan was titled Prince of Chu, established a residence in the capital, and was granted the position of acting Grand Commandant. The investiture ceremony ended, he sat down and held my hand. After I leave the palace, entering the inner court will be more difficult. I have arranged everything around you properly. In the future, when you act alone, you must be extremely careful. I hugged him tightly. I said nothing. Although sad to part, I was still happy for him. Leaving the palace, he could establish a residence, interact with hundreds of officials, manage his own salary and income, and also start building his personal power. Like a dragon hiding in the abyss, he had to hide for too long to wait for this day. Tristan patted my back gently, telling me if I wanted to study, just study, he would find a way to find a tutor for me. Changing his usual spoiling demeanor completely, he looked straight into my eyes and said seriously, Luna Lin, you must persist in studying. He told me not to let the palace assimilate me. Sooner or later he would welcome me out of the palace, and I must be ready. I giggled, breaking the touching atmosphere. I giggled? I know. When you become rich, don't forget me. He retorted. Wait until I become emperor. Ouch, that hurts. Tristan withdrew his hand after flicking my forehead, saying helplessly that he knew to bestow Julian to me, right? But he said my male god was also about to leave the capital. He knew this too. Old Marquis Anding obeyed the emperor's decree. He went to the southwest border to quell the rebellion. Young Julian grew up on horseback, so naturally, he was taken along by his grandfather. Life in the deep palace was not easy, not materially but spiritually. I cannot be like the noble consort who raised me, with a heart calm as water, spending all day with only the blue lamp and ancient Buddha as companions. Once you know how green and free the sky outside the palace walls is, your heart will become open. Fortunately, the uncle who fell from the sky pitied the reputation of a talented woman I cultivated from childhood. In addition, Tristan's reputation in the court became increasingly prominent. He secretly lobbied and found a chancellor to teach. Every week I have 2 days to go from the inner court to the Wenhua side hall in the outer court, where a tutor teaches me poetry. Although they were just words embellishing the peaceful and prosperous age, or astronomy and geography and subjects unrelated to court politics, not forcing me to learn lessons for women, made me secretly rejoice under the blankets. On the remaining days, I had 1 or 2 days to go to the racecourse to ride horses or play shuttlecock. I played with the concubines in the harem. When I was about to reach the coming of age at 15, the noble consort who raised me fell critically ill. A woman who was not favored by the emperor all her life, spending all day with Buddha. Her last sentence on her deathbed was begging the emperor to let me leave the palace and establish a residence. The dog emperor did not say yes or no, just held the noble consort's hand and said one sentence: "You have worked hard these past years." I knelt by bed, kowtowed heavily once. When my forehead touched the ground, my tears gushed out. The emperor uncle was indeed the emperor uncle, having not much sincerity. Raising me in the deep palace until I was 14 was simply to use me as a pawn for a marriage alliance with a feudal lord. Damn it, it must be that bastard Prince of Zhenan. After the noble consort's funeral, Tristan found me privately, swearing as soon as he opened his mouth. That old man, 1 foot in the grave. Tristan gritted his teeth, saying he wanted me to go there as a second wife. That old man really knows how to calculate. He deserves to have few children. I haven't seen him for 2 or 3 years. Exchanging letters is not as good as meeting face to face. I sighed, saying he was much taller now. Compared to me, he already had the appearance of a mature man. He exclaimed that I had grown a lot too, and it felt like changing my diapers was just yesterday. Saying this to a graceful young lady, he was so polite. Over the years, Tristan had done a lot of practical work. In early March, the emperor ordered him and the vice minister of rights to jointly run the civil service exam. Right in the spring cold season, Tristan busied himself for the participating candidates, going back and forth between the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights, submitting memorials multiple times to repair the examination hall. He personally supervised the construction 2 weeks, providing charcoal, fire, and warm clothes for the candidates. This series of actions won the hearts of people from top to bottom, receiving quite a few praises, even that the emperor uncle mentioned it when chatting with me. Tristan was nearly a head taller than me, rubbing my head with a bit of novelty. He told me to rest assured, this marriage would not happen. The Prince of Jeannin is not an honest man. The possibility of rebellion is very high. I was not surprised either. Over the years in our correspondence, Tristan never hid political changes from me, hearing so much. I also had some political sensitivity. Who does not have an emperor dream? I joked a few sentences, then suddenly asked if he rebelled, who the emperor uncle would send. Tristan raised his eyebrows, looking at me with a smile that wasn't a smile. He said it would be the male god I missed, Chen Justice. I was stunned for a few seconds before realizing that Chen Justice was Julian. Julian had performed the capping ceremony and added a courtesy name 2 years ago. I laughed. I hadn't heard his name for a long time. Tristan threw me a shocking piece of news. The barbarians in the southwest have surrendered. Julian led 8,000 elite soldiers to attack the barbarians' base camp at night, capturing the tribal leader alive. The southwest border has been in chaos for over 10 years. Finally pacified, I asked Tristan after Julian returns, where the emperor uncle would place him. He said it was hard to say, that old man has been confused by medicine these past few years. He cannot be judged by common sense. Tristan said the regular broken army of the Chen family is 30,000. During these years of quelling rebellions, they have successively enlisted more soldiers, increasing nearly double. Not to mention the ranger army of nearly 30,000 elite cavalry that Julian personally selected and trained over the years. I gasp. 30,000 elite soldiers, no wonder. No wonder the situation in the Anding Marquis household was like fire in recent years. The old lady of Anding Marquis household frequently entered the palace. 30,000 elite soldiers. Tristan whispered that if he were in that old man's position now, he wouldn't sleep peacefully either. I also whispered that he sleeps very well. Yesterday he called for 3 palace maids to serve him in bed, 3 of them, truly energetic. We looked at each other. We laughed. Tristan said he took medicine until he was deluded. This time the Chen family returns in triumph. The victorious days will be hard to live. On the 5th of August, the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Anding Marquis returned in triumph to the court, singing the song of victory loudly. The Son of Heaven held a banquet to celebrate the merit at Chengguang Hall in Jianjiang Palace. After 3 rounds of wine, old Marquis Anding suddenly knelt down and kowtowed. Old Marquis Anding cried and said that he would not fail the emperor's grace, willing to hand over 4 levels of military power, including the front army, right army, middle army, and rear army of the broken army squad. The monarch and subjects held hands and looked at each other, tears blurring their eyes. When I heard the news in my bedchamber, I couldn't help laughing. Old Marquis Anding was indeed a smart man, smart in that he handed over, but didn't hand over completely. Indeed, the learning of officialdom is an art. On the 8th of August, the Son of Heaven left the capital to conduct the autumn hunting at the Chen hunting ground. The Son of Heaven arrived, the imperial guards followed closely. Tristan was busy up to his eyes. The customs of Great Heng were quite open. Restrictions on women were not too strictly regulated. It was common for female relatives of high-ranking noble families to go hunting and have fun. Julian naturally could not miss this fun. I grew up small in the palace. The emperor uncle had few children, having only 5 children under his knees. The first prince, born to the noble consort, was born with a disease in his right ear. Just like the noble consort, spending all day with only the blue lamp and ancient Buddha as companions. The second prince was extremely talented, born to a lady of handsome fairness, but when he was 15, he fell off a horse and lost a leg. In this situation, I should be secretly happy to have peers to chat with, let alone having close friends in the boudoir. In addition, my status was noble, and the aura of a genius was promoted excessively, making everyone in the capital know Princess Changlet, who was talented and intelligent, extremely favored by the emperor, who ordered the grand scholar of Wenhua Hall to personally teach her. This led to the fact that when arriving at the hunting ground, no one dared to play with me. Anyone who spoke to me would tremble and bow. feeling what invincible loneliness was like. I had to lead the guards to hunt alone. However, my archery and skills were indeed not bad. On one hand, because the palace was too boring, mastering the few pastimes available was not difficult. On the other hand, Tristan would sooner or later become emperor. This path has always been recognized as high risk. No matter what, one must learn some skills to preserve one's life. While thinking, a deer jumped out in the forest. I spurred my horse forward, quickly drew my bow and aimed. I missed it. Just as I was about to draw my bow and aim again, an arrow tore through the wind, flew past the horse I was riding, and hit straight into the deer's throat. The force was so great, like piercing clouds and breaking rain. The deer was pinned dead to a large tree trunk, a tree so big that two people could not hug it around. Branches and leaves shook violently, the arrow vibrated and made a humming sound. I was so angry I laughed, daring to steal prey from my hands. This person was showing off too much. I hate those who like to show off the most. The sound of horse hooves rang out from behind. It seemed quite a few people were coming. I turned around and saw a man riding a majestic white horse leading a group of people. The group of imperial guards beside me immediately blocked in front of me. That man reined in his fine horse to stop obediently. His gestures were extremely calm and skillful. The man flew down from the horse. I recognized the mature face of Julian. Eyebrows like paintings, eyes like shooting stars, appearance like jade and gold, elegant demeanor. Compared to the elegant noble young master in my memory, after experiencing the tempering of war. Now his aura was cold and sharp, completely a mature man, like a war saber that had tasted blood concealing its momentum. At this moment, Julian with broad shoulders and a slim waist, wearing a short crimson coat, sleeves embroidered with gold and jade fitting tightly, jade pendant clinking with his footsteps, truly looked like a jade tree in the wind. Fine, I thought to myself, if it's you, then feel free to show off. After all, my principle is just to chase after beauty. Julian clasped his hands and bowed, his voice low, his attitude distant. Julian pays respects to the princess, unintentional offense, hope the princess forgives. He did not announce his official title. It seemed the emperor uncle was still having a headache, not knowing where to place him. I sighed again. No wonder when I was small and met him for the first time, I was mesmerized by him to the point of losing direction. This aura, this beauty, how could one find a second person in the capital? No wonder after Julian returned to the capital, so many noble ladies from famous families glued their eyes to him, truly a hot catch. Behind Julian was a group of young masters from aristocratic families and female relatives. They went hunting together. The timid ones were scared by the group of imperial guards behind me. The bold ones secretly looked over here. I stayed in the deep palace for a long time. The emperor uncle intended to confine me. Over the years my image was promoted vigorously. To them, I was indeed very mysterious. I dismounted and said gently that it was fine, just hunting for entertainment. Saying these words, I even wanted to laugh. Years of living the life of a noble lady still left a mark on me. No matter how I act, I can still act. A man standing behind Julian stepped forward to bow to me. William, officer of the Right Imperial Forest Guard, pays respects to the princess. I nodded in return, saying for a long time no see, Officer Wei. William had been a study companion for Tristan for many years. They were ants on the same rope long ago. To me, he was more familiar than others, so he extended an invitation. If the princess did not mind, how about joining us for the hunt? Thanks to my mother, I had a beautiful face, specifically how beautiful. When I first traveled here, because it was too boring, having nothing to do, I kept looking at myself in the bronze mirror. Even when I was a small lump of fat, one could see the beauty like epiphyllum flowers falling in snow, let alone now that I had grown up. Tristan once exclaimed, fortunately the emperor was really my uncle, otherwise, with his father's personality, I might have had to become his stepmother. I smiled slightly, not unexpectedly. I heard suppressed gasps of surprise, so I had to trouble them. The servant had finished handling the deer Julian hunted and came forward to ask for instructions, perhaps hesitating about ownership. Julian said he had snatched my prey. If the princess did not mind, could she accept this trophy? To be honest, although from the first time I met him, I made a joke telling Tristan to bestow him to me after becoming emperor. In reality, the interactions between him and me were not many. When still studying at the Imperial Academy, constrained by status and position, the competition between him and me was limited to fighting for first and second place in exams. As the years passed, a wider world opened up before us, waiting for Julian to conquer and explore. I was confined in the deep palace, even news about him was only heard from Tristan. I didn't expect this to be the first time we had a proper conversation. I silently cursed this man, eating feudal society, didn't hesitate much to refuse, and accepted it decisively. Thanks to my old brother, now, whenever I see Julian, my first impression is of the 30,000 sleepless elite soldiers. And since ancient times, the autumn hunting season always had a dual nature, being both a game and a military exercise, especially large-scale hunts like this. According to custom, these 30,000 sleepless elite soldiers would definitely participate in military exercises and hunting. The fact that Julian had leisure time to hunt with a group of noble young masters right now could only mean his current status was really awkward. 30,000 elite soldiers had not been handed over, no matter how confused the emperor uncle was, he had to restrain him. Royal power, I sighed silently, but didn't show it on my face, chatting gently with William beside me. After all, William inviting me to hunt was fake, taking this opportunity to exchange information with me was real. I also officially met people in this aristocratic circle. These young men and women were in their youth, at this moment wearing Hu clothing, no one was not full of vitality. I liked this atmosphere. The last person to bow to me was the granddaughter of Grand Tutor Zhou, neither arrogant nor flattering, her whole body exuded an intellectual aura, even overwhelming her delicate soft face. Cecilia Zhou smiled at me, saying she had always heard her grandfather mention Princess Changlet's talented reputation over the years. Today she finally got to see my noble face. Where was the talented reputation? I purely had the advantage of time travel. Regarding true learning, I certainly could not compare to those properly taught in scholarly families like Cecilia Zhou. I winked mischievously, saying maybe Grand Tutor Zhou, seeing I was a princess, had to deceive them unwillingly. Everyone laughed out loud. William laughed the loudest, saying the princess was indeed, as His Highness said, witty and approachable. I raised my eyebrows, thinking maybe this place was also where he deceived you because he was my royal brother. This time even Julian smiled. The cold handsome man looked really beautiful when smiling. The solemnity between his eyebrows seemed to melt. Only then could one see his true age, right? 20 years old, if placed in modern times, he would still be a young man. William exclaimed, "Justice, you just smiled." Julian quickly returned to his expressionless face, saying he saw something wrong. Everyone laughed out loud. The sky was high and the wind was blowing. I stood in the crowd. I looked at him boldly. Just as Julian's eyes met mine, I smiled slightly at him. He seemed stunned for a moment, pursing his lips. So cute, I thought wickedly. Turned out he was still a cool guy with contrasting cuteness. The young men and women participating in the hunt all had familiar partners. After mounting their horses, they quickly separated into groups, entering the dense forest one after another. William did not mount his horse, very likely wanting to invite me to go together. Male beauty was enchanting, but the status of these two was too sensitive. I had reached the age of coming of age. My marriage was currently the focus of attention. The fewer troubles, the better. Thinking for a moment, I spoke up proactively, saying there were imperial guards behind me. Afraid of spoiling the two's mood, why don't we go separate ways? William understood my meaning, climbed onto his horse, sighed regretfully, saying he had heard rumors that the princess was proficient in horsemanship. Originally thought he could witness it once. I was receiving a bow and arrows from the imperial guards, thinking this guy really knew how to make others happy, couldn't help laughing. Asking who he heard that from. Fifth royal brother. His boasting about me cannot be fully believed. William probably didn't expect I would joke with him. Immediately stepped forward. He said His Highness had mentioned more than once that the princess loved horses. After Justice returned to the capital, he brought a good horse. His Highness even specially instructed him to save one for the princess. I had never heard of this surprise gift. However, I shifted my gaze to the majestic white horse being ridden by Julian. Julian's white horse was famous, rumored to be extremely intelligent, not only achieving many great merits on the battlefield, but also once saving Julian's life. Because of this white horse had an arrogant and stubborn temperament. Strangers could not get close, even feeding and washing were done by Julian himself. Sensing my gaze, Julian remained motionless as a mountain, until William called out Justice once, then he reined in and moved forward. The fine horse came in front of me, neighed loudly, and unexpectedly lowered its head. I was quite surprised. My hand was not slow either, gently stroking its white horse head. The white horse closed its eyes, seeming quite to enjoy it. Since it was so, I was not polite, directly increasing the stroking force, whispering while stroking, "Very good, very good." At this moment, the white horse closed its eyes completely, using its nose to nudge my palm. This intimate appearance not only made others but even Julian surprised. Normally when someone approached, it would not bother to pay attention. Julian raised his eyebrows, saying it was the first time seeing this brat so obedient. William had a lot of right to speak on this matter, saying he hadn't even touched it once. I asked if it had a name, Chasing Wind. Julian pulled the reins tight, making the horse that was increasingly flattering stay away from me, saying that in this batch of new horses, the fastest and strongest one was also a white horse. His Highness had already reserved it for the princess, so I would just pretend not to know. I put the quiver on my back. Julian had a distant attitude towards me, even deliberately avoiding me. Being in the palace for so many years, I still had this observational ability. I ignored the heavy feeling in my heart, said Julian. Leaving now, young Master Chen. Finishing the sentence, I cracked the whip and rode away. The maple forest was red as fire. I rode amidst the mountains, thinking about why Julian had such a cold attitude towards me. The imperial gods behind were quite far from me, keeping a distance so as not to disturb. Prey had been released in the hunting range. My target was very clear, I just wanted a rabbit. But rabbits were small and moved agilely. In addition, I kept thinking about Julian. Missed 5 arrows, disappointment was not quite it, just a bit regretful. I still wanted to eat roasted rabbit. The imperial guards following behind saw this, stepped forward and asked if they needed to herd the prey to the princess. My gloomy mood was swept away. I couldn't help feeling a bit amused, shook my head. The imperial guards assigned to protect me were all old acquaintances, and could be said to have followed my side since childhood. To me, they always had the mentality of old fathers. This was spoiling too much. I was leisurely riding around in the mountains and forests. My wild nature was gradually released, feeling refreshed. I let the horse walk freely, coincidentally entering the hunting area of Julian and William. I reined in to stop, raised my hand. The imperial guards behind also silently stopped. They were hunting a deer. The two coordinated extremely well, one driving, one chasing. Julian suddenly pulled out a long arrow. He drew his bow and shot while riding fast. The arrow, like lightning, flashed through the air, making a sound of tearing wind. The fleeing deer immediately collapsed. Good eyesight indeed, I couldn't help admiring. My little kung fu compared to those who had experienced real combat was truly incomparable. While pondering, my ears suddenly moved. I immediately turned around, drew an arrow, notched the bow, and decisively shot forward. The imperial guards behind rode forward. A white rabbit was wounded in its hind leg. William rode closer to me, asking what the princess hunted. A rabbit, I said, finally caught it. Although the attendant Julian brought was skilled in handling the hunted prey, he still stood in place. William approached me, asking if the princess saw the cute rabbit and wanted to catch it as a pet. Not really. I smiled. No, I just wanted to eat roasted rabbit. After speaking, everyone laughed together. William said if the princess did not mind, she could try our meat roasting skills. We were just preparing for a picnic. Senior Chen here is a master of the art of roasting meat. I looked towards Julian not far away, wondering if I had luck with food today. Julian clasped his hands to apologize to me, saying rustic roasted meat has a pungent smell. The princess is noble, afraid she won't be used to eating it. Indeed, a refusal. I smiled, but my face turned cold. What if I want to eat it today? The atmosphere instantly became tense. William was about to say something, but seeing Julian's face still calm, saying it was Julian's honor, in the end, still couldn't eat roasted rabbit. Just finished setting up the fire, a martial guard hurriedly rode to report. The Son of Heaven encountered an assassination attempt within the encirclement like a thunderbolt in a clear sky. Julian and William looked at each other. I asked about the situation. Bad news. The old monster lived long and didn't die. Worse news. The fifth rushed out to save the Son of Heaven, currently in danger. My face changed, extremely horrified and angry, immediately cracked the whip and rode away. When I arrived at the traveling palace, just in time to see the imperial physician carrying a basin of blood out, I suddenly felt dizzy, even my fingertips were trembling. Seeing Tristan lying on the bed with a bloodless face, my first reaction was if anything happened to Tristan, no one would be at peace. First I would kill that dog emperor, crush his bones and flesh, then commit suicide to follow Tristan. After all, in this feudal society, there was nothing worth living for. Fortunately, Tristan didn't give me a chance to take revenge on society. His wound was not in a vital position. The most dangerous stage had passed, just needed rest and recuperation. I let out a long breath, gradually regaining my calm. With a dog's life like Tristan's, how could he do things that would result in a total loss of life? Tristan woke up the next day, seeing me. He immediately winked. I knew the play was about to happen. Then I witnessed a scene of extremely deep father-son affection. The acting skills of both sides were profound. The carefully prepared lines made me feel inferior. When the play ended, Tristan sighed, saying he was exhausted to death. I said nothing. Tristan immediately whined. I knew he didn't want to make me angry. Sighed, told him to stop whining and not waste time coaxing me. Save strength to recuperate. Tristan smiled, but only smiled for a while before coughing violently. I hurriedly rubbed his back. Tristan held my hand, saying in a low voice, "Little sister, brother can no longer do as he pleases," he said. "This is the path I have chosen. No matter what, I must walk to the end." After the double ninth festival, Tristan had recovered more than half. My marriage, which had been forgotten for many years, was suddenly brought up again by the emperor uncle. The Prince of Junan's wife passed away 3 years ago. I and the Prince of Junan have deep affection. Truly cannot bear to see my sworn brother lonely and helpless. Changlet, I know it is unfair to you. You grew up beside me since childhood like my daughter. I really couldn't listen anymore. Benignly raising my head, I said somewhat shyly, "Uncle Changlet was willing." I bowed. Uncle raised Changlet for many years. Grace is boundless. Changlet is willing to share the burden with Uncle. After leaving Sanjiang Hall, I couldn't help sighing. The Imperial Palace is truly a wonderful place to practice acting. Now, my acting skills can be considered top class. At midnight, Tristan and I met as usual, but this time the difference was that Tristan brought along his aides and confidants, who had followed him for many years. When I lifted the curtain and entered, these people hurriedly stood up, bowed. I looked at Tristan in surprise, saying, "Gentlemen, don't be polite, just sit." The aides sat around Tristan, not many, only 4 people. These must be the confidants he trusted most. I glanced over. There were people from the Imperial Guards, Ministry of Rights, Ministry of War, and even eunuch Fuquan, who was close to the Dog Emperor. How close? The Dog Emperor just found me to discuss marriage, and this eunuch was already waiting outside to serve tea. I really didn't care. These years Tristan had been getting along quite well. I walked to sit beside Tristan, naturally poured tea, summarized the general situation for Tristan. Although surely he already knew, the Prince of Junan could also be my father. Tristan smiled coldly, saying he already had half his body in the grave, seemed very rushed, must help him fill the other half. I stroked the teacup, listening to them report news to Tristan. "Ah, right," Tristan said, "Julian is about to get engaged." My hand trembled. Tea splashed out, burning my finger. Tristan hurriedly took a handkerchief for me, looking at my appearance, seeing what's a man worth. Seeing me bow my head and say nothing, his tone became gentler, gently holding my finger and blowing lightly to comfort, saying, "It's just a man. What do you want that brother hasn't given you? Is it worth being heartbroken?" The aide beside Tristan was shocked to the point of changing color, as if his entire worldview had been shattered. Even Fuquan had discerning eyes, hurriedly taking medicine to help. Tristan acted as if nothing happened and applied medicine to my hand. Actually, it was no big deal. But being spoiled these past years, my hands were slender like scallions, 10 fingers not touching spring water. That bit of heat caused blisters. I asked Tristan which young lady in the capital it was. "Not in the capital. It's a distant cousin from Julian's grandmother's maternal family." Tristan took a silk handkerchief to cover my hand, saying it hasn't reached the point of exchanging birth dates. Just an intention. He wanted to ask what I thought. Fine, a distant cousin is also normal. Julian hadn't handed over the 30,000 elite troops from any angle. His future wife shouldn't have any background. This was the best choice. Tristan took the towel handed by the eunuch beside him, wiped his hands, saying, "Don't think any more. This marriage won't happen. From the beginning, I didn't want to let it happen, regardless of whether it's yours or his." Tristan didn't speak carelessly. 10 days later, the Prince of Junan rebelled. The Son of Heaven was furious. Court politics were chaotic. The Emperor appointed Julian as the High Commissioner of Junan to suppress it. The Emperor uncle's psychological quality was too poor. After getting angry, he started to have a stroke. The side effects of eating too much salt for so long finally revealed themselves. The Dog Emperor was bedridden. My marriage was announced to be postponed, momentarily. In the Imperial Palace, it felt like thunder in the sky. My intuition told me this rebellion of the Prince of Zenon was not simple at all. Indeed, later I received a secret letter from Tristan. This rebellion was likely masterminded and executed by the third prince. Very good, I exclaimed. The bigger the guts, the braver the rebellion. Courage worth noting, truly worth noting. 2 days later, the third prince, together with the left general of the imperial forest and others, launched a coup, attacking the Bayou Gate, slashing their way in. At this time, the imperial forest general, He Yuanjing, betrayed them. The guards and armored cavalry at Taiji Hall quickly responded, killing the third prince. When receiving the news, I thought for a while, then understood that He Yuanjing was one of the aides who met me and Tristan. I said these years Tristan had been getting along quite well. He traveled through with a golden finger of being loved by everyone. Anyone meeting him would be infatuated, willing to risk their lives for him. A month later, High Commissioner of Junin Julian defeated the rebels, withdrawing troops to the capital. After the mastermind of the coup was finished, Tristan devotedly served his old man for another month. In the 24th year of Great Heng, he was invested as crown prince. After more than 10 years, Tristan finally got promoted. The next step, the life goal, was aiming straight for the emperor's throne. After the investiture ceremony, Tristan and I met. Tristan's first words were that dreams must still be had. See, hasn't it come true? I didn't answer him ask directly when he colluded with Julian. Tristan was shy, asking if I saw this too. Oh my god, could it be a mistake? According to the theory of time travel, yes, the aura of being loved by everyone should have fallen on my head. After Tristan was appointed crown prince, wanting to show off, he was ceaselessly busy. At this time the old emperor was bedridden, so I had time to be leisurely and idle. The 15th of the 8th month, the night of the full moon. It was mid-autumn again, a joyful festival occasion of the year. The mountain pressing on my head was now lying on his back in bed. Finally, I had a chance to go out and be lively. This rare occasion to go out made me so excited I couldn't sleep. Tristan sighed, saying I was like a prisoner released home. I dressed as a man, just to move conveniently, not intentionally hiding my gender. Passing each wall separating the palaces, magnificent pavilions with green tiles and red pillars gradually faded from view. The carriage went out of Vermilion Bird Gate. Going straight from Vermilion Bird Gate to Lujing Bridge, crossing the bridge to the south was the busiest night market street in the capital. The mid-autumn festival atmosphere filled the air. Every house was decorated brilliantly, erecting pillars decorated with flowers in front of the doors. By the river, multi-storied buildings were crowded with guests, noisy music was heard. The streets were crowded with vehicles, passers-by were singing happily. Everywhere smelled of osmanthus flowers. I was like a child who had never seen the world, overwhelmed to the point of not knowing the way back. Tristan behind seemed to be strolling leisurely. I just bought a rabbit made of yellow beeswax, turned back to show him, saying this rabbit is so cute, later let's eat spicy rabbit heads. Tristan was about to answer but his eyes suddenly froze. I realized something, turned back under the brilliant lights, seeing Julian and others. This group was really noisy and lively. I glanced briefly. There was Julian William, the eldest grandson of Grand Tutor Zhou Yunhe, and the son of the Imperial Forest General, Harrison Xia. Behind each person, they brought their female relatives in splendid clothes. These people were about to bow. Tristan immediately gently tapped the fan used to show off on me. On festival occasions, I took my little sister out to play. No need to be too rigid. The little sister in the house was me, didn't say anything, just nodded in greeting. William was a skillful person, also very familiar with us, immediately stepped out to ask if the master didn't mind, would he like to have fun with us. I raised my eyebrows, thinking this brat knew how to advance and retreat. Good socializing, still going out with the boss after work, truly doesn't make people uncomfortable. Tristan and I looked at each other. Actually, we didn't mind playing together, but Tristan could sympathize with subordinates, and William was fine too. But the others might not want to hang out with their direct superior. Tristan's status made it inconvenient to say this. I also didn't want to beat around the bush. Threw away the wax rabbit in my hand, laughed and said it's rare to have a good occasion. Just afraid you gentlemen won't be natural. The rest including Julian all said it was fine. I sighed, whispered to Tristan, saying I didn't believe they really were fine. Brother, you came to ancient times and still play the suppressing boss style. Tristan used the fan to tap me once. Since we were going together, it was unavoidable to greet. The men present here I all knew. They all solemnly shut their mouths tightly. Even Julian bowed to me as a man. Truly timely, their attitude towards me was also cold. Each person introduced their female relatives, briefly introduced to each other. Sister Julian. Chen, after bowing, naturally introduced the gentle young lady, quiet behind. This is a distant cousin in the family. I thought this was the distant cousin Julian was about to get engaged to. The young lady always kept her head down. Hearing this, she immediately bowed to me. I couldn't see her face, could only see hair like clouds and a fair neck when bowing. True style and temperament of a noble young lady. Turned out he liked this type. My heart couldn't help feeling sour, also mixed with a few parts of inexplicable disappointment. No matter how good I was in love matters, actually, I was no different from most men. I observed that young lady too closely, making others glance at me. Tristan unceremoniously used the fan to tap me once again. I held my head, asking if he could give me some face. Everyone laughed respectfully. In the capital, William was the most familiar. He led us to the highest wine tower by the river, Jade Radiance Tower. Jade Radiance Tower was located on the riverbank. At night lights shone brilliantly, casting bright reflections on the water surface. Inside came the sound of singing. The wind blew carrying the smell of wine rushing into the nose. Hadn't arrived yet but could already feel the happy lively atmosphere. Truly a wealthy place. Tristan and I walked in front. William and Julian walked half a step behind us. Julian walked beside me, keeping a non-offensive distance, footsteps calm. Along the way, I could even smell the fragrance from his clothes, gentle and noble, a bit cold, not only fragrant but also very fitting to my aesthetic. This dynasty placed great importance on burning incense. In the palace, they used warm, strong incense, but I preferred cold, light scents. Superiors do, inferiors follow. Not only noble scholarly families, even ordinary rich families would go to incense shops to buy mixed incense to burn. Rich young masters like Julian, William valued it even more. Most of them blended incense themselves. Right, I laughed, realizing, although a general, Julian was essentially a noble young master. All 6 arts of a gentleman achieved maximum scores. During the years at the Imperial Academy, his reading ability was also top-notch. William saw me laugh and asked what the princess was laughing at. At this moment we had gone up the arched bridge. I sniffed, saying the wine smell was so fragrant. This is the most famous decade spring wine of Jade Radiance Tower. Later the princess should try it. William said, only this wine is strong, the princess must be careful, don't get too drunk. William gently explained, in front of the Jade Radiance Tower courtyard, there is a pond. In the pond, there is a silver statue in the shape of a phoenix. All night wine will spray from the phoenix's mouth filling the pond, so there is such a pungent smell of wine. Jade Radiance Tower had a U-shape, totaling 3 floors. We were led by a waiter to the 2nd floor. Looking from above, I indeed saw a pond in the middle of the large hall, wine water flowing around, silver statues shining, dazzling light. On the festival occasion, the tower was fully booked. I didn't know how William managed. The waiter respectfully led us to the 2nd floor, to a bright seat. Tristan stood looking at the river far away. He didn't sit, the rest just had to stand. I took the fan in his hand, sat by the railing. Old man, can you sit down? Letting a bunch of National Congress delegates stand here to spend the holiday with you. Tristan smiled and sat down opposite me, gently saying no need to stand on ceremony. Sit as you please. My position in this was very interesting. It was from the moment sitting down here that I realized a big mistake in my thinking. In my eyes, such a rare festival occasion. Surely everyone didn't want to eat, drink and have fun with the boss. I even prepared a mindset for an awkward atmosphere. But I forgot the era, forgot Tristan's status even more. He was the crown prince. In the future, he would be the emperor of the people. The people having fun with him today were his future subjects. Floating in officialdom for many years, how many people get to see the true Son of Heaven? Such a rare opportunity, how could everyone miss it? From chatting to sitting down, these noble youths had relaxed faces, natural and comfortable, all lining up under the leadership of Tristan and me. The atmosphere was really harmonious and happy, only I felt awkward. I lonely waved the fan, blaming myself for my naivety. The waiter came clasping hands under his chest, bowing to welcome, smiling a sincere smile that wasn't annoying at all. The waiter wore a neat uniform, clearly trained, could recognize these noble guys. Took Tristan as the center, smilingly offering the wine menu. What do the honored guests want? Interesting. I laughed once and immediately ordered wine. Tristan handed me the wine menu, saying you just choose. I stretched out my finger and tapped, asking why there was no Decade Spring. The waiter bowed respectfully, asking the guest to forgive. Decade Spring only sells 5 barrels a day. Today all sold out. The son of the Imperial Forest General heard this, and was about to explode. I raised my hand gently asking, so what if I just want to drink it? The waiter calmly replied, asking the honored guest to please look. Under the wine pond in the main hall there are jade beads. If the honored guest shoots an arrow through the jade bead opposite and hits the wine cup, we will not only offer the honored guest a barrel of Decade Spring, but also waive all the fees for the honored guest today. I squinted slightly, only then clearly seeing the jade bead in the wine pond below. If you don't want to sell, just say it straight. I looked at Tristan. Tristan frankly replied he didn't know either, he didn't have that ability. I looked at Harrison again, that brat's face turned red. A martial artist with unrefined skills. There are people with refined martial arts. But they don't want to save face for me, and I also don't want to make myself look stupid. Moreover, the girl about to be engaged to Julian was also here. Opening my mouth again would be too rude, not knowing propriety. I withdrew my expression, looked down at the menu, intending to randomly order a type of wine. But Tristan said he had heard of Justice's reputation for proficiency in archery, hitting the target every shot, famous as piercing young from 100 paces. Didn't know if today there was luck to enjoy your skill. I looked at Tristan. Tristan still calmly closed the fan, gently saying he also wanted to taste if Decade Spring truly lived up to its reputation. Without saying another word, I poured tea for my big brother. Julian stood up and bowed, saying it was Julian's honor. I shifted my gaze to the Chen family's distant cousin. She and the female relatives sat far away. Hearing Julian speak, her expression didn't change at all. Appearance and expression were flawless. A standard noble young lady. Tristan raised the teacup to drink, looking at me meaningfully. Done it. My real purpose was to ask Julian to win this barrel of wine for me. Not getting the person, having a barrel of wine as a souvenir wasn't bad. I wasn't embarrassed about this at all. Young Master Chen stood up to receive the bow and arrow from the waiter's hand. He was very tall, at least about 1.9 meters, broad shoulders, small waist. In front of Tristan, his aura was often retracted, but when holding the bow and arrow in hand, the whole person seemed to suddenly change. Pressure and cold breath from the battlefield surged. The sharp arrow pierced through the wind, brushed past the jade bead, pierced through the wine cup, stuck firmly into the wall, making a buzzing sound. The wine tower fell silent. Then thunderous cheers rang out. Countless guests in the wine tower clapped and cheered. The atmosphere boiled over. The young boy struck the bell. Amidst the resounding cheers, the honored guests on the second floor were given a barrel of Decade Spring. 100 years not regretting, 1,000 times drunk. 1 cup can dispel 10,000 sorrows. Not long after, a maid brought a tray of wine up the stairs. The wine cups on the tray were made very exquisitely. She respectfully clasped her hands and poured wine for everyone. Indeed, Decade Spring did not fail its reputation. I gently took a sip. Everyone clinked glasses with Tristan. Amidst the noise and excitement, I whispered to Julian, "This cup respects young Master Chen." Julian didn't refuse, calmly lifted the cup. Honor for Julian. Lights shone brilliantly. Human voices were noisy. We clinked glasses with each other. The wine fragrance was rich, burning from the throat to the chest. After drinking the Decade Spring, my desires for him also disappeared. The last memories of that mid-autumn outing were also blurred. Tristan explained that it was because I drank too much wine. Finally I became delirious. My brain automatically deleted embarrassing memories. I poured tea for him, neither agreeing nor denying the explanation. Tristan was silent for a while, suddenly asked, "Little sister, do you really like Julian?" I asked if he hadn't known for a long time. Since I was 4 and met him, I had that intention in my heart. I said a dog can also be nostalgic for 10 years, let alone a human. That day returning to the palace, you were drunk. I carried you to the carriage. On the way back, you kept crying in my arms. I looked down at the teacup. Hay is about to get engaged. Julian refused. He didn't agree. My hand trembled, looking at Tristan in surprise. Why refuse? It was because of the pacification of the rebellion that Julian's age for engagement had already passed 20, exceeding the usual age for marriage in the court. Let alone his position being truly the focus of power struggles. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie. Otherwise, why would the Anding Marquis hurriedly arrange an engagement with a distant cousin for him? I tapped my finger to disperse the tea foam, thinking maybe Julian wanted to get closer to him. No, they were already too close. Julian had someone he loved. Tristan seemed unable to bear it, turned his head away, whispering that news from the Golden Guard said there was a female doctor in Julian's army who followed the troops, 16 years old, an orphan with no parents. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak, until I felt my fingertips go numb. Did I swallow the bitterness on the tip of my tongue, softly replying, asking if his Golden Guard could even hear about these things. Tristan almost couldn't speak, staring at me. So he refused the marriage because he wanted to marry that female doctor, right? No, Julian's character absolutely would not be like that. I realized if he refused to marry the distant cousin to marry that female doctor, it was clearly putting that female doctor on the fire to roast. If he wanted to protect her, the only way was to keep it secret, not revealing any affection. Moreover, the situation in the Anding Marquis household was also extremely complicated. Julian's father, Second Master Chen, was the eldest son, but had mediocre talent and was famous as an infatuated man. But the object of his infatuation was not Julian's biological mother, but his deceased first wife. The first wife was the eldest granddaughter of the Minister of Revenue. After giving birth to the eldest son Ming Chen, she passed away. 3 years later, the Minister of Revenue married his second granddaughter to Second Master Chen, continuing this marriage affinity. Ming Chen's talent was also stupid like that, but he was overly doted on by Second Master Chen. When the old Marquis returned from the border and saw it, he said, "Fine, it's ruined." Julian was the legitimate son, but was the second legitimate son, originally could not inherit the title. Second Master Chen was excessively biased, claiming all of Julian's military merits belonged to the Chen family. The future belonged to his older half-brother. No matter how bright he shone, he could not safely escape the Marquis household. Julian was suppressed by his biased father, resisting the pressure to let his older brother inherit the title. His biological mother was just a second wife, who didn't know how to flatter. Not only could he not marry a woman who was all alone, but he didn't even dare to have a single hope. Could he bear to let a wife with no background face the turmoil, complexity, and conspiracies of the Marquis household? On the surface, Julian's reason was that he would establish his career before getting married. Tristan looked at my face, shaking his head and sighing, saying behind my back he had to have the Golden Guard investigate to find out. Establishing a career before getting married. I smiled, saying it was a very good reason, among his peers, who could be as successful as him. So Luna, I want you to give me an answer. Do you still want to marry him? Tristan looked at me very seriously, saying, it's just a man. Is there anything you want that I wouldn't give you? Becoming the crown prince was indeed different. If you don't want to get married for the rest of your life, there is also a solution. Let me send you to Jing to cultivate yourself and pray for blessings. Life is short, only a few decades. You can swap identities, the world is vast, go wherever you want, leisurely and free. Of course you can also stay in the capital, be a princess enjoying glory and wealth, or if you want power in the court, you can also become a princess holding great power. This hasn't happened before. Moreover, you marrying him is not disadvantageous to me either. Tristan said he wasn't like that old monster who couldn't sleep all night. I couldn't help laughing. Tristan also laughed. He took a sip of tea, seemingly having something difficult to say. I saw him hesitating, clicked my tongue, asking what exactly he wanted to say. Little sister. Tristan seemed a bit nervous, turning the jade thumb ring on his hand, asking if I ever considered marrying him. Tristan saw me looking at him in surprise, hurriedly said it was just in name, we would pretend to be husband and wife, essentially siblings. I just needed to wear the title of Empress. I could do whatever I wanted. No, I said slowly, I have been in this imperial palace prison for over 10 years, finally got out with difficulty. You brat want me to be in prison for life. Moreover, aren't you disgusted? I smiled and said, good youth of the 21st century, we can't act out the cousin romance drama. Tristan lowered his head and smiled, saying that was true too. He raised his head to look at me, saying before I said after he ascended the throne to bestow Julian to me, for so many years I had never demanded anything from him. Little sister. Tristan said softly, whether you marry Julian or Gudu, I only have one wish, which is for you to be happy. If marrying Julian can make you happy, I will fulfill it for you. The atmosphere seemed a bit unusual. I changed the subject, saying Julian and Gudu were like choosing concubines, maybe he wouldn't refuse this marriage. Tristan chuckled, returning to his usual rogue appearance. Imperial orders are hard to disobey. I said it was his personal opinion. Tristan looked at me strangely, asking if his personal opinion had any effect. No effect. I was silent, but not because of Julian. Since when did my brother, who couldn't even stand seeing a little eunuch being beaten, could say the phrase, "Imperial orders are hard to disobey"? Now I just want to hear a sentence from you. Tristan looked at me, saying if I really wanted to find true love, then choose slowly, but if I just wanted to find a man to play with casually, there was no other Julian in this whole capital. I spat out my tea, looking at him. Tristan handed me a handkerchief, asking if it was to that extent. I took the handkerchief to wipe my mouth, asking if he didn't see his attitude towards me, avoiding me as if I were a tiger. With this status, avoiding you is also normal. Tristan rubbed his chin, saying his personality is indeed extremely cold. Maybe it fits your possessive taste. I rolled my eyes. On the 9th of September, I will lead the officials up the mountain to offer sacrifices. At that time Julian will also go along. You and he can talk privately. I put down the teacup, raising my eyebrows at him. Already a youth of the 21st century, still playing these ambiguous games. Tristan was very calm, saying contact more, talk more, maybe you won't be infatuated anymore. Of course, if you can help me grab those 30,000 elite soldiers, it's not impossible. Double 9th festival, climbing high to admire chrysanthemums, the emperor uncle was still bedridden. Tristan as the crown prince led the inner court officials to the altar of heaven on Mount Song to offer sacrifices. The Golden Guard cleared the way, imperial guards followed. The procession stretched for miles to the Joding gate of the altar of heaven. The crown prince got off the carriage to enter and offer sacrifices. It had been 5 hours since I woke up. I sat in the carriage squinting sleepily, just thinking that this was only the start and already having a headache. Regretted it, shouldn't have come. Julian's beauty really harmed people. However, that thought completely vanished when I met Julian at noon. Mount Song had a summer resort garden. Because I liked quietness, Tristan intentionally arranged for me to stay at Autumn Water Pavilion separated by a lake. A familiar little eunuch bowed to me, then reported that the crown prince had obtained a jar of good wine, inviting me over to enjoy. At that time I was preparing to take a nap, dressed quite normally. Hearing that, I only planned to drape a floating cloud coat over to go. The little eunuch smiled and sighed, saying His Highness invited the princess to put on some makeup. I frowned, realizing something. The maid beside me stepped forward asking what style I wanted to wear. I rubbed my chin saying a bit pure, try first, if not then change to another next time. The maid was a bit suspicious, not understanding what, if not then change to another next time, meant. Silently took off my floating cloud coat, gently asked if wearing a gauze coat was okay. Why not? Both fragile and romantic. After finishing makeup, the little eunuch led the way, indeed towards the crown prince's residence. Passing the corridor, circling half the lake, finally, the little eunuch stopped at Linksy Pavilion. In the pavilion, Julian sat in front of the tea table, demeanor like orchid and jade, wearing crimson official robes, a fish bag hanging at his waist. Seeing me arrive, he bowed, saying princess. Under the corridor were all golden guards guarding, all looking straight ahead. I thought to myself, truly admiring Tristan. Saying a private meeting meant a truly private meeting, and openly at the crown prince's residence. Beside Linksy Pavilion was a large bamboo forest. At this moment the wind blew, fluttering my gauze coat. I called out Lord Chen. Julian pursed his lips. I saw the dimple on his right cheek. Clearly, Julian was already Tristan's man. He returned from Namping Town after suppressing the rebellion. Although proficient in strategy, he didn't hold any position. Everyone could see he was waiting for Tristan to ascend the throne, didn't know where he would be placed. I sat down with Julian while thinking. He raised his hand, water flowed down from mid-air, neither fast nor slow, then brought the teacup in front of me. Inviting the princess, truly a standard gentleman with etiquette. I lowered my eyes to look at the tea, green like jade, tender enough to smell the fragrance, water clear, it was premium tea. Unfortunately, I didn't come today to admire the lake and enjoy tea with him. I used my fingertips to stroke the rim of the cup, going straight to the point. Does Lord Chen know why you and I meet today? What else could it be but to get closer? Just see first. If Julian agrees then great, if not then use power to force him. Forced melon isn't sweet but can still quench thirst. Tea leaves in the cup were spinning. Julian's action of lifting the cup seemed to pause for a moment. I felt something. Raising my head to look at him, his face was still cold as before, showing some calmness in danger. So it would illusion, but cultivating this ability was really good. I regretted it. It seemed like I still had to force him. His Highness has told Julian. Julian leisurely drank tea, softly asking, the princess has a noble status, is a golden branch and jade leaf, and can freely choose heroes in the world, why choose Julian? For those who are not easily provoked, the best way is to hit straight to the point. I laughed and said I had noticed him for many years. Julian was slightly stunned, a few parts of surprise appeared on his face. I thought to myself, he probably thought I did this aiming for his 30,000 elite soldiers. Although that was also the truth, but I looked into his eyes, saying, moreover, as you said, my status is noble. Is there another Julian in this whole capital? The answer was no. Since the first time I met him at 4 years old, I had paid attention. I just didn't want to be sloppy. Even if it's a man, I also want the best one. Julian lowered his eyes, saying he feared Julian had failed the favor. I knew why you refused. Speaking of this, what remained was just a battle of wits. You have someone in your heart, right? Julian suddenly raised his head, sharp eyes probing. I smiled, saying, don't look at me like that. If I could have acted, I would have acted long ago. Moreover, that's not my style. Too cheap, too low. I didn't avoid his sharp gaze at all, saying bluntly, I actually don't need your opinion, just need the crown prince to bestow the marriage. I believe that regardless of the Anding Marquis' household or the crown prince, they would be extremely happy. I came to meet you today out of respect for you, and also because I truly like you. Julian said nothing, but he avoided my gaze. The tense jawline also softened. Young Master Chen, given the situation of the Anding Marquis' household, any girl marrying in would be peeled off a layer of skin, but I am different. I am a member of the emperor's family. I slowly poured tea for him, saying if I marry in, it is a monarch-sucked ritual, not filial piety. No one dares to frown at me. If unhappy, I can immediately return to the princess's residence. But you serve in the palace all year round. If you marry someone else, when she suffers grievances, can she return to her mother's home? Julian stroked his thumb ring. He came from a famous family. He couldn't be unaware of the dirty tricks, tormenting people in the inner quarters, let alone his biological mother had also suffered because of that. If married, what conditions does the princess have? I want you and me to become a real husband and wife. I said however you treat a wife, you must treat me like that. Julian was a bit suspicious. If you marry me, naturally you are my wife. Husband and wife are equal. Naturally, I will respect and protect you. Miscalculation, forgetting he was a true ancient person, never treating marriage as a joke. His concept of husband and wife was too rigid. Also, not taking concubines. Even more unacceptable is taking the person in your heart as a concubine later. I looked into his eyes, saying I don't care how much you loved the person in your heart before, but once married to me, you must cut it off completely. Julian's expression didn't change. I entered the military camp at 14, fighting north and south for many years, have no chambermaid at home, will not take concubines in the future. I am innocent with her, nothing crossing the line. He paused a bit, saying moreover I have chosen a good marriage for her, in the future, each in a different place, irrelevant to each other. I raised my eyebrows, heart feeling heavy again. Indeed, true love couldn't even bear to let her be a concubine. Since it was so, this battle of wits had the desired result. I harvested the fruits of victory, so set the wedding after His Highness ascended the throne. The tea was also cold. I took off the jade bead at my waist and gave it to him. Staying in the deep palace for a long time makes contact troublesome. I give you a chance to regret. Before the winter solstice, if you want to cancel the marriage, bring this jade bead outside the Fanghua Hall to find Duke Daewon. Julian didn't accept it. When opening his mouth, his tone softened a lot. Why must the princess go to this extent? I said it already. I smiled, saying I like you, just like you like her. After all, I can't bear to force you. Julian said nothing, bowed his head to take a sip of tea. I witnessed the entire process from his neck turning red to his face. Lord Chen's cultivation effort was finally broken by me. I even suspected if the weather was a bit colder, steam might rise from the top of his head. I laughed, asking what his intention was. Julian let out a breath. His face wasn't as red anymore, but a thin layer of pink on that handsome face was beautiful enough to make one's mouth dry. Julian stood up, solemnly bowed a grand salute to me, saying Julian absolutely will not fail the princess. That is enough. Julian left. Half an hour later, Tristan sat opposite me. How was it? I played with the jade bead that Julian still hadn't accepted, asking if he didn't know already. Why torture yourself like this? Nothing is perfect, also can't be called self-torture. I said it's just someone in his heart. I don't believe I can't get Julian. Even if I can't get him, playing free is no loss. Tristan sighed and stood up, saying he truly owed me. Over the years he acted as both my father and mother, and still had to worry about my marriage. I giggled and respectfully sent my parents off. 2 months later, my sudden emperor uncle abdicated due to illness. Crown Prince Tristan ascended the throne, changing the reign title to Karma. Julian was appointed as commandant of the capital, commanding the Ranger army, stationed in the capital and surrounding areas. In the second year after the new emperor ascended the throne, I was bestowed with the second son of Marquis Anding, Julian. As soon as the imperial decree was issued, the whole court was shaken. Everyone was astonished at the ruthless power, balancing tactics of the new emperor to win over military power. He didn't hesitate to use his childhood sweetheart as a pawn for a marriage alliance. After all, with the affection over the years between Tristan and me, everyone thought I would become the mistress of the inner palace. The noble women in the capital all regretted it. Julian was a delicious piece of cake, noble family, son of a general, appearance peerlessly beautiful, no one under heaven could compare. Unfortunately, eaten by me, no way, want blame then blame Julian for being too attractive. So much so that when I was only 4 years old and met him for the first time, I booked him with Tristan. At the time of booking, my status wasn't qualified enough. Tristan strove and worked hard for me, trying to go straight to the emperor's throne. Who saw it and wouldn't exclaim a sentence? Sibling affection moving heaven and earth. After bestowing the marriage, the Ministry of Rites was indescribably busy, the first great happy event after the new emperor ascended the throne. Also having extremely great political significance, who wouldn't want to show their face before the new emperor? I finally left the palace to establish a residence, and chose a location in the busiest central commercial district, next to Tristan's old prince residence, just separated by a street from the Anding Marquis' household. Besides, as my biggest backer, the current emperor acting as both my father and mother, bestowed upon me 3 houses in the prime land of Chang'an, where an inch of land is an inch of gold, plus 3 manors and 2 villas in the suburbs of Chang'an and Mount Zhongnan. These rewards, although said to be too generous, were reasonable and logical. Everyone just thought this was the current emperor's compensation for my bestowed marriage, but later the new emperor gifted me an additional 5,000 guards inside the residence. There were 2 guard teams of over 1,000 people. This was a bit unusual, rewarding me far exceeding the standard. Let alone this almost publicly implied I enjoyed independent military rights. Since the founding of the country, no princess, let alone a commandery princess, was actually allowed to establish a separate residence. Indeed, the next morning in court, an official submitted a memorial. The new emperor sat firmly on the high platform, didn't speak any polite words, just hit on emotions. From the fact that I lost my parents since childhood, the tragic background, to the 2 children growing up together, helping each other through tribulations, even wiping tears. Listening to it, I could only exclaim a sentence: why did the official submit a memorial? Tristan's acting talent was trained since childhood, playing emotions, how could you play against him? That day after court adjourned, Tristan came to my place and threw a teacup. The majestic emperor aura collapsed completely. Wearing court robes, he cursed that official who submitted the memorial for 20 minutes. After cursing enough, the current emperor elegantly drank tea, saying, my biggest backer is sitting here, if you can live then live, if not then just consider playing Julian for free then divorce, after all, just a man. Finally, Tristan waved his hand, saying, the Ministry of Rites has chosen the date, you prepare to be a bride. On the 6th of June, Julian and I got married. I walked out of the princess's residence. The dowry, stretching from north to south, circled the whole capital before being carried into the Anding Marquis' household. Julian led his elite iron cavalry to welcome the bride. Tristan, ignoring the Ministry of Rites' opposition, sat on the high hall's main seat. Hearing this news, he almost couldn't keep a straight face. How could he? That was the elite iron cavalry that had made him sleepless. Amidst congratulations, Tristan held my hand, slowly placing it into Julian's palm. He used a voice only the 3 of us could hear to say, I hand my sister to you. Justice, the first half of your life you protected the country, the second half you protect her well. My heart was extremely moved. Julian held my hand, slowly saying one word: Wes. I walked out of the princess's residence just like that, and moreover, walked out of the imperial palace that had imprisoned me for 15 years. The flower carriage moved very smoothly. Both sides of the road were filled with congratulations from the common people. I lifted the veil to eat some snacks to line my stomach. I thought to myself, Julian is truly loved and welcomed by the common people. Then, amidst firecrackers and cheering, I was helped down from the carriage by Julian, stepping over the fire basin while he held my hand. The matchmaker chanted, and we obeyed, bowing to heaven and earth. Until sitting on the wedding bed, Julian still didn't let go of my hand. The wedding dress sleeves were very wide, covering our intertwined hands. In the bridal chamber, there were already juniors coming to watch the excitement. I wore a red veil. I heard a childish voice say, "Uncle Julian really can't bear to leave the bride," holding hands the whole way. Immediately, the whole bridal chamber burst into laughter. Newlywed, first time in life, who wouldn't like it? Figured it out, Julian knows to miss the bride. Julian seemed afraid I would be uncomfortable. He squeezed my hand once intending to let go, but unexpectedly was gently held back by me. Julian's movement paused. The next second he held my hand tightly, 10 fingers intertwined. I heard his low voice saying, "It's fine for me, don't offend the princess." The bridal chamber was silent for a moment, then became lively again. Married already, still calling her princess. "Is it okay, Julian?" I recognized this voice, it was William Way. The people in the bridal chamber today were all his confidants and good friends. The time has come, everyone quiets down. Amidst the matchmaker's voice, Julian finally let go of my hand, taking the wedding scale. Light went from dark to bright, the scent in the air gradually deepened. In the joyful atmosphere, I fell into Julian's black eyes. Facing each other, I blinked, looking at the handsome newlywed husband in front of me, smiling gently. A suppressed cry rang out in the bridal chamber, followed by a round of congratulations. Red candles flickered, creating a romantic atmosphere. Someone was singing, "Golden wind and jade do meet," counting countless earthly encounters. We faced each other for a long time, so long that the women beside us had to cover their mouths with handkerchiefs to laugh. "The bride is too beautiful," Uncle Julian stared until dazed. "Okay, time to tie hair and drink the nuptial wine." The matchmaker brought the tray. Julian took scissors to cut a lock of his long hair, then carefully approached me, taking a lock of mine. Breaths mingled, carrying a warm fragrance. I laughed again. The matchmaker shouted again, tying hair to be husband and wife, white heads never parting. Perhaps the atmosphere was too good. When we drank the nuptial wine, the moment our breaths mingled, I suddenly felt a bit nervous. Warm wine entered the stomach, the nuptial cup ceremony was completed. Julian lowered his head to look at me, whispering, "Princess, eat something more to line your stomach. Wait for the guests to leave, then take a comfortable bath. I will finish receiving guests and return." The groom went to the front hall to receive guests. With my status, those coming to disturb the bridal chamber also knew better and dispersed, leaving only 2 dignified ladies. These were Julian's 2 older brothers' wives. One was the wife of the eldest son of the main mother, the other the wife of the eldest son of a concubine. Neither brother was easy to deal with, and their wives were even less gentle, but my status suppressed them. No matter how difficult they were to deal with, they had to soften in front of me. The taller woman smiled first, saying, "Princess, I am Julian's eldest sister-in-law. This is the second sister-in-law." The second sister-in-law heard that and quickly bowed to me. I didn't stop her, gently saying, "No need to stand on ceremony. After today, we are all one family." The 2 ladies performed enough etiquette, exchanged a few pleasantries, then left. Julian's small courtyard was named Frost Dew Courtyard. While eating sweet rice balls, I conveniently called the maid who always served Julian to ask about the situation, only to learn that Julian normally never stayed at the Marquis household. After returning to the capital, he stayed in another small courtyard, not this place. Frost Dew Courtyard was the small courtyard replanned after the marriage was bestowed. Location and layout were all the best. Even the renovation was directly supervised by Julian. Through a few short sentences, I could imagine the conflicts that occurred because of renovating this courtyard, but what use was it? I represented the royal family, the new emperor. No matter what ideas the first or second branch had, they dared not have any opinion about this small courtyard. I didn't ask any more. In the future, I wouldn't interfere in inner court matters either. There were more important things waiting for me to do. I recognized each servant in the room, found out their duties, gave rewards, then dismissed them. I wore sleepwear, observing the bridal room, finally knowing where the familiar feeling when lifting the veil came from. The layout of this bridal room had the same style as my bedchamber. About 3/4 of an hour later, I heard the sound of bowing outside. I looked up from my book. My handsome husband walked in. I got off the bed, but didn't see him approaching. I wasn't in a hurry to use the lamp to look. Under the lamp, beauty increases by 30%. Let alone the face of the beauty Julian, whom I always missed. At this moment he had drunk wine, and indeed had the demeanor of a clear moon to embrace. The beauty bowed to me, saying his whole body smelled of wine. Afraid of disturbing the princess, let me bathe first. Saying that, he immediately turned into the bathroom. I raised my eyebrows, leaning on the bed to look at the erotic art. This was drawn by the imperial painter in the palace, strokes clear, poses diverse, quality extremely guaranteed. Reading halfway, Julian finally finished bathing. He changed into snow, white inner clothes, his body having a fresh damp smell. I still said nothing until Julian walked out. I patted the edge of the bed, gently saying, "Sit down." The bed was a very large babu bed. Lowering the curtain would create a small private space. Julian stood silently for a while, finally sitting down beside me. The breath and pressure of a mature man rushed over me. I smiled, closing the book and looking at him, asking if he remembered the words spoken at the pavilion on the lake during the double Ninth festival. Julian's expression was still as bland as usual. Hearing that, he nodded once. I didn't see any joy on the wedding day, but I quite liked his appearance. The colder he was, the better sleeping with him would be. I said, "My name is Luna." "If you are not used to it, you," Julian called out. "Changlet." Once, I asked how I should call him. I propped my head to tease him. "My Julian, Julian the Third, or husband." Julian's face didn't change, saying, "Call me whatever you like." I reached out my hand. Julian seemed not to have reacted yet. I directly leaned forward to hold his hand. A broad, long hand, the palm had rough calluses, the temperature very high. I could clearly see Julian's whole body stiffen. I could feel Julian didn't want to consummate the marriage with me much, so he kept delaying time. How could that be allowed? I shook his hand, saying I came back here to sleep with him. Today is the wedding night. If I can't eat today, what about later? My Julian, after today we are husband and wife living together, are all intimate like this. You must get used to it. Julian gently held my hand. Right, just like that. I softly asked, "Why not look at me? Am I not beautiful?" Julian's thick eyelashes trembled slightly, looking up straight at me. Red candles shone through the curtain. The cool fragrance in the opposite gaze gradually became ambiguous and warm. I asked again, "Am I not?" Julian pursed his lips. His ability to control emotions was indeed very strong. His face was still cold as before, but his ears had turned red. After a long while, he turned his head. "Beautiful. Oh my God, so satisfying. Why is there a man so attractive? Be a bit tougher in attitude, a bit colder in expression, the stronger the pressure, the more attractive." And I tried provoking him, asking, "Beautiful like this but still don't want to consummate with me? Still remember the person in your heart?" Julian's facial lines, which had just softened a bit, tightened again. The warmth in those eyes completely disappeared. He coldly said, "After parting at Mount Song, I have long discarded thoughts about her. The princess doesn't need to be repeatedly reminded." Right, just like that. I reached out to stroke his Adam's apple. Julian suddenly looked up at me. I met his gaze and smiled, asking, "But still don't want to consummate with me, right?" Julian's Adam's apple moved, his voice hoarse, saying, "The listening maid sent from the palace is her person." "Is that so? So what?" I suddenly pushed him down. In his surprised gaze, I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Must consummate today. If you can't do it, I will do it myself." Julian's chest heaved violently. From face to neck, he turned red. Thinking he came from a noble family, rode horses at 14, and experienced so many life and death situations, he probably never dared to think in his dreams that one day he would be forced by someone. Julian's eyes turned red with anger. His eyes were deep, nose bridge high and straight. When looking at others, he always gave a feeling of being miles away. At this moment, the anger softened that coldness, and the whole pair of eyes became vivid. "Princess." His voice seemed to be squeezed out. "Please respect yourself." I tilted my head looking at him. "On the wedding night, telling your wife to respect herself. Moreover, didn't we say not to call me princess anymore?" I completely softened my voice, acting spoiled, kissed the bridge of his nose, and whispered, "Darling Julian, you already knew, I have looked forward to you for many years." My Julian practically overheated, stuttering. According to ancient rules, with his circumstances, Julian lived 20 years, except for his birth mother. Today was probably the first time contacting a female. Moreover, a high-level one. I buried my face into his hot neck, used the tip of my nose to rub his rough skin, gently calling out again, "Me Julian." Red candles burned, making cracking sounds. Red curtains lowered. Flickering candlelight created shadows, covering heavy breathing and sounds of water. Shadows cast through the bed curtains intertwined, gradually falling onto the bed. I took off the gold crown holding Julian's hair. Black hair cascaded down. I smiled, pulling his hair end down, and whispered gently, "My Julian, after many years, I finally get to enjoy male beauty." This male beauty was vivid. Although the first time lacked a bit of experience, he was good at being very obedient, easy to teach. After finishing, he even brought professional habits, summarizing and drawing experience himself. I was hurt and kicked him once. Next time he absolutely won't let me have to kick again. A bout of clouds and rain, red candles burned out, opening eyes groggily, my throat was a bit dry. In front was a heaving chest, warm rough skin having 2 bite marks from me. Outside the curtain came the maid's voice, "Princess, it's time, should wake up." Julian had opened his eyes, shocked by the posture of me curling in his arms. Just about to sit up, he was hugged by my arms around his neck, head buried in the hollow of his neck rubbing. Sleep for another quarter. Julian's body stiffened for a moment, but very quickly relaxed. He clumsily stroked my sideburns, whispering, "The princess should get up. If you want to sleep, then offer tea first, then come back to sleep." I was completely awake, holding his hair end, dragging my voice. "Haven't got off bed yet and already changed tone. Last night you didn't call me princess." Early morning, Julian turned beet red again. His ears remained red until he finished dressing. The second day after the wedding, because of auspicious signs, we both wore red. When leaving the courtyard down the steps, a maid supported me. I looked at Julian beside me and held his hand. Julian stopped, the maids retreated a step, bowing heads. Let go when reaching the inner hall. I shook the held hand, saying, "You must get used to it, there will be many times later." Julian pursed his lips, his walking pace slowed down. I said, "You look very beautiful in red." Julian still said nothing, but his palm was hot. Inside the inner court was full of laughter and talk. After announcing our arrival, I let go of Julian's hand. Usually when offering tea to the father-in-law and mother-in-law, the bride must kneel, but I wasn't an ordinary person. The brocade-embroidered cushion was only placed in front of the old marquise. Kneeling once like this was okay, after all, because the old marquise contributed to the country and was also an elder. Julian and I knelt down, offered tea, changed addresses, and received gifts in the old marquise's smile. The rest weren't necessary. My status didn't require bowing to father-in-law and mother-in-law. It was just that after offering tea to the marquise, I looked towards Julian's birth mother, currently the marchioness, and smiled. My attitude was clearly much closer. "Mother, please have tea." The marchioness's already benevolent face became even gentler. She held my hand, saying the word, "Good," 3 times in a row. Basically, that was it. Although the first and second branches were seniors, my status could suppress them down a level. I just needed to go through the motions for etiquette. The meeting with the bride, having nothing special, ended just like that. According to Great Karma law, newlate officials have 7 days off. When leaving the inner court, I held Julian's hand again. This time he was much more used to it. "Any plans for these days?" I asked. "I have a manor in the suburbs of the capital, exactly like the study in Jiangnan. Behind the courtyard is a natural hot spring. These days we can go there to kill time." I raised my eyebrows. I still thought he would use official duties as an excuse to avoid me. Julian stopped, turned to look at me, asking, "In your heart, am I that kind of person?" Julian's expression remained unchanged, but I knew he was angry, and I didn't change the subject either. "Don't blame me. Before marriage, you avoided me like avoiding tigers and wolves. Plus you had someone in your heart. I thought you hated me. If I hated you, I wouldn't have married you." Julian said, "You are my wife, these are things I should do." I laughed. We were just entering our bridal courtyard. I stopped, approached him, and shook his hand, saying, "I was wrong. Don't be angry anymore." Julian, this quiet guy, had never experienced this style of slapping straight then coaxing. So much so that from yesterday until now he was led by the nose by me. I saw him still cold-faced, hugged his waist, looked up at him, acting spoiled, saying, "Don't be angry anymore." Julian turned his face away, very quickly turned back. He held my shoulder, took a deep breath, seeming to want to reprimand me for not conforming to rules, but didn't know why. Just looking into my eyes he gave up. Even the hand holding my shoulder lost all strength. "I'm not angry." Julian was just about to call me princess, seeing me pout, immediately corrected, "Changlet, I'm not angry, this is right." I smiled at him, but let go of my hand neatly, turned to walk into the courtyard. "So hurry up and arrange, best we should go early tomorrow morning." I walked a few steps, then heard footsteps behind. I curled my lips slightly. Little brat, don't believe sister can't handle you. Early next morning, Julian and I arrived at the study in the suburbs. On the way, I asked him what he usually did in the study. Carving seals, practicing calligraphy to calm the mind, in late spring then riding horses to enjoy countryside scenery or fishing for pastime. Julian looked at me sitting crookedly leaning on his shoulder, very sincerely asked, "Were you this unrestrained in the palace before? Not reprimanded by the teaching mama?" I got beaten a lot when small. My voice was lazy. After the crown prince left the palace to establish a residence, no one dared to manage me anymore. Julian's voice sounded emotionless. "The new emperor and you truly have deep affection." I couldn't refute. Playing with his hand, I suddenly said, 2 months after my father died in battle, my mother also passed away. I was welcomed into the palace. Julian looked stunned and looked towards me. The late emperor had only a few sons. As soon as I entered the palace, I was favored. He allowed me to stay with the noble consort, letting her teach me. The consort preferred quietude and resided at Fanghua Hall, separated from Qingyu Hall by some distance. Tristan, who was the 5th prince at that time, lived in the nearby Qingyu Hall, the cold palace, because he was born with a condition that made him appear dull and mentally unstable. Julian didn't interrupt, he just held my hand tightly. The first time I met him, he crawled out from a hole in the wall separating the two halls, miserably hungry, asking me for a piece of the cake I was eating in the flower garden. Mentioning this was technically overstepping, but for once, Julian didn't stop me. I gave it to him. After that, I didn't understand why, but he suddenly regained his wits. From then on, he truly lived as the 5th prince. I said that just because of that piece of cake, he always treated me like a biological sister. Of course, there were things I didn't say, such as when I recited the mathematical code, odd changes, even remains. And Tristan replied, "Symbols look at quadrants." After that, we hugged and cried loudly. Coming from the same place, the modern world, that was the true reason for the deep affection between him and me. "I married you, it's true, to help the emperor win over military power." I looked straight into his eyes. "But if I didn't want to, the emperor wouldn't have forced me either. I agreed simply because of you." Julian seemed unable to bear my gaze and quickly looked away. Just a moment later, he slowly wrapped his arm around my shoulder. I took advantage, almost leaning my whole body on him. Strangely, clearly in the wedding we had completed the great harmony of life. We were in perfect harmony. Yet Julian still couldn't adapt to intimate gestures. But it didn't matter. I closed my eyes, thinking breaking down the defenses of a man like him is the most interesting thing. After 2 hours in the carriage, we finally reached the study. It was clear Julian loved this place very much, inside and out. There were traces of meticulous care. I guessed he spent all his free time here. After resting, Julian and I strolled on the small path in the village. At this moment, I held his hand, no longer feeling the resistance as before. A gentle wind blew, carrying the fresh scent of wild grass and trees. Far away, cooking smoke from the village spread, and the sounds of buffalo mooing echoed. I started chatting with Julian. Due to the limitations of the era, ancient scholars all had a common fault, only talking about family affairs, with absolutely no intellectual connection with the wife. Partly because they arrogantly thought women were untalented and had narrow knowledge. Partly because women, constrained by rules, couldn't reach that level of communication. Therefore, on the way back, Julian suddenly fell silent for a while, then said, "This is the first time I have talked to a woman like this. Get used to it. Being with me, there will be many more first times." I suddenly changed the subject. "Have you ever talked like this with the person in your heart?" Julian held my hand tightly, his expression unchanged. He looked at me once, then shook his head. Apart from conversations about medical treatment when injured, she and I had no other communication. I made no comment, laughing as I said, "So you think this marriage is good?" That night we ate grilled fish in the courtyard pavilion. The fish was brought by nearby farmers. Under the night sky echoing with cicada sounds, Julian sat cross-legged on the cushion grilling fish for me. Finally, I got to eat Julian's grilled fish. I intentionally sighed. Truly not easy. Julian was used to my teasing and still calmly said, "Later, if you want to eat, I will grill for you." I turned to look at his focused profile, thinking to myself, progress is so fast. Only the second day. My heart started itching again. "Have you ever grilled the person in your heart?" The charcoal fire popped. Julian blandly said, "No." A while later he added, "She and I didn't have anything crossing the line. She didn't even know my feelings." This, I believed. In this era, I feared even when treating injuries they couldn't be alone. But I looked at the hard, cold lines under Julian's jaw and knew he was unhappy again. I smiled, leaning over to peck a kiss on his cheek. Young Master Chen almost fell sitting on the ground. He turned to look at me, the firelight reflected in his bright eyes making them glisten, carrying surprise and astonishment. I burst out laughing. You must get used to it. Before marrying Julian, I knew he had never had an intimate relationship with any female. This made me very interested in invading his private space and breaking his personal boundaries. For example, after washing my face and brushing my teeth, then getting into bed, I curled in his arms reading a book. Julian would frown. At such times, I needed to rub against his neck. After a few rubs, Julian would sigh, placing his hand on my waist. This habit only needed 7 days to form. By the 8th day when I got into bed, Julian even naturally spread his arms, waited for me to curl into them, finding a comfortable position on his chest, then hugged me tight. Or like occasionally mentioning the person in his heart, when he faced me emotionless, emitting cold air, I would hug his waist and act spoiled. Julian would reflexively stiffen a bit, then relax. At this time I need to look at him with a pitiful, aggrieved face, softly saying, "I'm jealous." Jealousy naturally was fake. I didn't even know the surname of the person in his heart. This habit needed 16 days to form. By the 17th day, I just needed to approach, and he would reflexively spread his arms, wait for me to hug his firm waist, then pat my back to reassure me. Again, for example, demanding a kiss when he returned. This wasn't so easy, because Julian would dodge. At this time, I needed to ignore him, withdraw all enthusiasm, neither talk nor look into his eyes. Julian's attitude would shift from, "It's okay," to confused. When I turned my back to him on the bed, he completely broke down, turned over to hug me. Silent for a long while before squeezing out the sentence, "Now you can kiss me." This habit took a bit longer, about 21 days. Julian's leave after marriage ended. He returned to the palace to work for my emperor brother. When getting off work, I was arranging my dowry in front of the desk. He changed into home clothes, walking in just as I looked up. Julian naturally bent over towards me. Before our lips touched, we realized at the same time that Julian's composure failed once again. A patch of red spread across his neck, quickly reaching his face. I even felt the heat. Julian intended to straighten up but was pulled back by me grabbing his collar. I pulled him down, while our breaths intersected facing each other. A while later I lowered my eyes, gently kissing the tip of his nose once. Julian's whole body, I laughed silently, kissing his lips. The next second, heaven and earth spun. Julian carried me horizontally. The maids in the outer room quietly retreated, the red curtain lowered. That night, I lay prone on the bed, rewriting the discoveries and practical laws of the pastime. I held the brush discussing the fall of the noble young master, what is high standards, low skills, clumsy and practisive. The subtitle called Julian User Guide. No, I stared at this line for a few seconds, crossed it out, and rewrote Guide to Eating Julian. That's the right flavor. I stretched and crawled into the bed, while groggy, Julian instinctively spread his arms. I unceremoniously rushed straight in. Training successful, Julian changed truly a lot. Although still cold, faced with an aura making people dare not approach, his mood was very happy. Moreover, coming home from work earlier and earlier, so early that Tristan wrote a letter praising me, asking how I trained this quiet guy. I drew a middle finger sending back to him being emperor and so idle. Although a general, Julian was highly cultivated and had very elegant hobbies in life. Julian's Frost Dew courtyard was spacious and quiet, the front yard was planted with a large plum forest, and the back yard had a natural lake. The lake bank was planted with a large bamboo forest, the middle of the lake had a water pavilion, but only one path led straight to the backyard of Frost Dew courtyard. This also meant the water pavilion was almost exclusively occupied by Frost Dew courtyard. Frost Dew courtyard was originally given by the old Marquis to the young master, but the Marquis was excessively biased. After the second master got married and demanded Frost Dew courtyard, the Marquis came to find the young master, telling him to yield to the second master. The servant with a face round like a bun accepted the walnut I gave with 2 hands. He was young and hadn't tied his hair yet, unlike the close servant beside Julian for many years who strictly kept rules, give a little snack and he revealed everything. Frost Dew courtyard was originally the best courtyard. The plum forest in the front yard has been planted for 100 years. When the old Marquis gave it to the young master, he said this plum showed the young master's nature. The chubby kid ate and chatted. The young master liked practicing swords in front of the plum forest in the early morning most. Rain or wind, he didn't rest. In summer, he liked going to the water pavilion to enjoy the cool air, or drink wine, paint, play the zither, or admire the moon. I smiled. These past days when cleaning the study, I found records from many years ago belonging to Julian. Although he didn't feel any family affection, he grew up in a wealthy family, admiring snow in plum gardens in winter, fishing at the water pavilion in summer. A leisurely atmosphere spread everywhere. I asked, so did Julian give it up? Definitely didn't. At that time the Southwest rebelled. The young master followed the old Marquis to the Southwest. When he left, the courtyard was empty, having the Marchioness there. The second master didn't dare to usurp it. The chubby kid sighed. But after the young master returned, he didn't stay at Frost Dew Courtyard anymore, but stayed in the room next door. If not for the princess, we wouldn't even be able to return to this Frost Dew Courtyard. The little child, acting old, exclaimed, still most comfortable staying at Frost Dew Courtyard. I couldn't help laughing. Intending to ask more, I heard the maid report, young master returned. The chubby kid hurriedly bowed to me, then bowed to Julian, stumbling as he ran away with his short legs. He had changed into casual clothes, habitually bending down to kiss lightly on my cheek, asking, talking about what? Talking about this courtyard. I poured tea for him. Frost Dew Courtyard was only taken back before we got married. Julian drank a sip of tea, then uttered a sound of agreement. Silent for a while, he then said, you like quietness. Frost Dew Courtyard has a plum garden and bamboo wall surrounding it, so it's very quiet. The backyard has a natural lake. In summer, no need to use ice. And it's not uncomfortable. I giggled. So it's because of me. The vulnerability he had just shown retracted. Noble princess, naturally everything must be the best. Not bad. Although he didn't say directly it was for me, I also liked hearing this sentence. I asked again. How did you know I like quietness? Julian's face was calm. Last time at Mount Song Summer Resort, your place was separated by a lake, the furthest place. I was always tempted by his appearance. I leaned over to stroke his hand. Today I cleaned the study and found your old records. You even know how to play the zither. I shook his hand skillfully, acting spoiled. Later after dinner, go to the water pavilion to play for me to hear, okay? Julian didn't say agree or not, but according to my understanding of him, he easily fell for these tricks. Now he didn't agree, but after eating, the first person taking the zither out would definitely be him. I guessed right. After the meal, I pretended to forget, lying on the chaise lounge reading a storybook. Julian sat drinking tea for half a quarter. His eyes glanced towards me several times before coughing once, calling the servant to his study to get the zither. I used the storybook to cover my face while giggling. Julian seemed a bit helpless, sighing, ordering the maid to light the lamps at the water pavilion. The moon reflected in the cold lake. Brilliant lights made the lake surface seem to have golden waves rippling. The wind blew water vapor on the lake's surface, dispelling the summer heat. I lit incense for Julian. Looking at the noble, jade, like young master opposite tuning the zither strings. Actually just looking at Julian's current aura. It was very hard to imagine a gentle side to him. Returning from the battlefield, he always carried a suppressing feeling, like an aura of cold blood. But I had seen him in his youth, fair skin, gestures carrying the elegance of a noble young master. The second master of the Chen family pursuing literature, basically cut off Julian's path to the imperial examination at the root. A melodious zither sound echoed. I sat beside him, thought a bit, then pushed the zither away and sat in his lap. Julian sighed as if used to it. Does this also have to be sitting in the lap? I uttered a sound of agreement, looked up to kiss his cold Adam's apple. You blocked the wind for me a bit. Julian didn't say anything more, hugged me a bit tighter, then took my hand and placed it on the zither. The bright moon hung high. Resting birds took flight amidst the harmonious zither sound. One song ended, our 10 fingers intertwined. Julian rested his chin on top of my head. His outer coat blocked all the cold wind for me. I asked, not allowed to take the exam. Do you accept it? I can do anything well. Julian's tone was normal, not talking about resignation or acceptance. Perhaps he was used to it. In my father's heart, I originally didn't have a son like me. I turned around to hug his neck, my head resting on the hollow of his neck, rubbing lightly. From now on, I will love you. But Julian had no reaction. I thought to myself, not right. Normally he couldn't stand direct attacks like this the most. I just intended to look up to see his face, but I was gently held by the back of the neck by Julian and pressed into his chest. Warm breath and the cool incense on his body blew onto my face. My waist was hugged tight. Julian lowered his head, resting on my hollow shoulder. His tone had a bit of gentleness. Then later I have to rely on the princess. Oh my god, he evolved. I was mesmerized and dizzy by the evolved Julian. Momentarily I didn't know if his incense was too strong or not. I leaned into his ear saying, "Darling Julian, I really like your incense. Last time at Jade Radiance Tower I already smelled it, but at that time you were cold to me." I said gloomily. "At that time I wanted to ask you for the formula, but you didn't even give me a jar of wine. Let alone the incense formula, it's my fault." Julian tilted his head, something warm brushed past my ear. I reacted to what it was, immediately stiffening for a second. Julian kissed my ear saying, "All my fault. Tomorrow I will blend incense for you." Okay, oh my god, super evolution. I was struck by lightning, stiffened in his arms. Julian's kiss went along my cheek to my lips. His tone was no longer gentle as just now, even a bit cold, but his words were completely opposite. "Later I want to drink wine I brew for you, want what incense I blend for you, okay?" I was dizzy, thinking to myself, exactly which sentence unlocked his enlightenment. This progress was too fast. I hadn't even used 1/3 of my skills. The cool scent was heated by our body temperature. I also launched an attack, gently saying, "Darling Julian, this is the first time you kiss me somewhere other than the bed." Julian paused for a moment, then hugged me as if surrendering. "Changlet, why do you always speak so directly?" I hummed. "You don't like it?" Julian didn't answer, he only lowered his head to kiss my lips. The night wind rippled the water's surface. Under the cold moon in the night sky, the bamboo and plum gardens swayed along with the waves, creating a sea of trees that undulated like the ocean. 10,000 things whispered, hearts stirred with spring fever. Julian was acting out of character. Ever since playing the zither at the water pavilion, I propped up my head, holding a brush to write about my research on Julian's psychological transformation, shifting from passive to active. Outside, a maid softly announced, "Princess, there is a letter from the palace." I accepted the letter. It wasn't a secret missive, so it must be Tristan, idle and producing nonsense, finding people to brag to. Attached to the back was an invitation card. I opened the letter first. The opening line, "Sister, caught that cold guy, right?" The middle of the letter was an explanation. Argument 1. Last week I bestowed upon Julian a piece of premium Hessian white jade, hinting that Princess Changlet liked jade bead earrings. Then, curious to the point of itching, I sent the Golden Guard to investigate. Indeed, Julian took the jade to Jade Radiance Hall for processing. If nothing unexpected happens, you will receive it today. Argument 2. Yesterday, after discussing work in the study, according to custom, I chatted intimately with officials to tighten bonds. Julian, a guy who normally never says a word, proactively asked me about your courtesy name. "What courtesy name do you have?" In a good mood, I call you little sister. In a bad mood, I call you little egg. Little egg, consider it yourself. The final conclusion: I am very happy to see your feelings are mutual. Quickly resolve the matter of the person in his heart, so I can rest assured holding those 30,000 elite soldiers. Below was a simple drawing of a person, looking very roguish. I held the brush to reply immediately, "Really too idle." Then choose an empress, brother. Being urged to marry by the collective officials will keep you honest. I wrote it in one go, blew the ink dry, and gave it to the maid to take into the palace. Then I opened the invitation card. Not unexpectedly, it was a wedding invitation from a subordinate sent to his superior, Julian. This was a very normal social activity. The reason Tristan had blocked it was that this subordinate was marrying Julian's person in his heart. Julian had intentionally chosen the man, then married the woman in his heart to that guy. I lowered my eyes, tapping this letter. I wondered if Julian would take me to the banquet. Outside, the sound of a maid bowing to Julian rang out. Julian had gotten off work. Today he returned half an hour later than usual. I calmly gathered the secret letter and invitation card. Julian changed into casual clothes and walked into the study. Seeing me sitting before the desk, he propped one hand on it, bending down to ask what I was writing. "Checking account books of the wine tower under my name." Julian lowered his eyelids, gently rubbing his nose against mine, then kissed my lips. This was a habit he acquired after playing the zither at the water pavilion. Before kissing me, he always liked rubbing his nose against mine, as if notifying me to prepare mentally. "I am about to kiss you." Before, I usually wrapped my arms around his neck to cuddle for a while, but today I was in no mood for that. Julian pursed his lips and stood straight up. "Is it the wine tower opposite Jade Radiance Tower?" I hummed once. "Must defeat Jade Radiance Tower, become the #1 tower under heaven." Julian chuckled, holding my hand. Didn't you say you liked my incense? The emperor said you liked cold sky incense. Tonight I will blend it for you. This Julian, perhaps because he hadn't established a stable intimate relationship with anyone for a long time, after getting married I gradually discovered he had a bit of touch starvation. At first, he could still restrain himself, but after I broke his personal boundaries with my occasional kissing and hugging, he increasingly immersed himself in physical contact. For example, now, he was just blending incense but still had to hug me in his arms, occasionally stroking and squeezing my hand. Even the maid entering to pour tea didn't find it strange. Although we had only been married for 2 months, who in the residence didn't know that Julian III and Princess Changlet had deep affection. Julian rested his chin on top of my head, gently explaining the incense ingredients. I was very familiar with this voice of his. Sometimes I even missed his cold voice from before. In the warm, comfortable embrace, I gradually got a bit sleepy. Julian kissed my hair. Sleepy. I hummed once, then thought heavy. I burst out laughing. My Julian was probably about to overheat. Immediately after, my palm felt cold. A cold object was placed into my hand by my Julian. It was a string of jade beads polished very exquisitely. The jade surface had an elegant light green color. I'm looking at it. I knew it was selected very carefully. Like it? Julian's voice faded a bit again, but I knew that was because he was nervous. Like it? I habitually rubbed against his neck, kissed his Adam's apple, expressing my feelings frankly. Originally, I already liked this string of beads very much, but because you gave it to me, I like it even more. Julian hugged me tight, pressing close to me, letting out a hard-to-notice sigh. This kid was secretly happy again. Incense lingered. I played with the beads in my hand while he fondled my hand. The atmosphere at this moment was extremely romantic. A while later, Julian spoke up. 5 days later, my subordinate organizes a wedding. After work, I have to go drink wedding wine. You don't need to wait for me. Sleep early. I was silent for a while, then asked, "Is it the subordinate marrying the person in your heart?" The warm atmosphere instantly turned cold. Julian stopped stroking my hand. His voice also became cold like when we first met, carrying a bit of oppression. "You read my letter secretly." I left his embrace and sat opposite him. "Didn't you also hide it from me?" I sneered. "What? The person in your heart is about to get married. Are you in a hurry to meet her one last time? Going to the wedding only because they are all your subordinates?" The air around Julian became even heavier. "Princess, why do you keep mentioning her?" I was completely provoked by his addressing me as princess. I looked up at him. "Because you care about her." Julian was stunned. His anger dissipated when he saw the tears in my eyes. I threw the jade string into his lap. The sound of the zed colliding was accompanied by my tears. I glanced at him once, turned, and left. The maids, scared, bowed their heads. Only the close maid following me from the palace entered the inner room. She gently held a towel, wiping tears for me. I sniffed. "Don't wipe anymore. I couldn't even squeeze out a few tears." She helplessly laughed. My crying scene was trained with the emperor uncle since childhood, focusing on crying while still remaining beautiful, pearls falling broken. "The princess is still a bit impatient," she added. "In this servant's opinion, young Master Chen doesn't necessarily have much affection for that young lady. He is just in the situation, and he himself doesn't see clearly." No, I held the silk handkerchief covering my eyes. 2 months already. I should also give a strong dose of medicine. As I predicted, Julian and I fell into a Cold War state. That night he slept in the study. The plan to go fishing at the water pavilion, because the scenery was beautiful, also failed. Enthusiasm and love given freely should also be taken back a bit. It was just that after 2 months, sleeping alone again felt a bit unused. I started leaving early and returning late to check and patrol the wine tower, intentionally avoiding Julian when he got off work. Until the 5th day, Julian's close servant came to pass the word, inviting me to go with him to the wedding banquet. When I finished my makeup, Julian had been waiting in the carriage for a long time. When getting on the carriage, our eyes met. I looked for a few seconds, then looked away, sitting on the other side. The whole way no one spoke. It was quiet to the point of only hearing breathing. Getting off the carriage, Julian supported me once, but didn't let go. I looked down, then gently but firmly pushed his hand away. Julian's chest heaved violently for a second. His fingers unconsciously curled, as if lingering on that bit of warmth. In this situation, Julian and I couldn't sit and eat at the banquet. We were just showing our faces to express importance. Besides, the bride didn't receive male guests. I walked around then got on the carriage to return. I didn't even see the face of Julian's person in his heart. I waited half an hour. Julian got on the carriage. A strong smell of wine rushed toward my face. I frowned. Julian's face was sober. Seeing me frown, he immediately softly apologized. All are my colleagues and subordinates. I cannot refuse wine. I said nothing. The carriage sank into silence again. I suddenly asked, "Is she as beautiful as me?" No answer. I was slightly disappointed. Just as I closed my eyes, I heard Julian say, "No." I opened my eyes and met Julian's focused and gentle gaze. He said again, "No one can be more beautiful than you." I was stunned, looking at him as if I hadn't reacted. Her appearance is ordinary, she is independent and stubborn, her medical skills are superb. In the military camp, many people admire her. I didn't know why. Clearly, he used an admiring tone talking about that girl. But I didn't feel any jealousy or discomfort, because Julian's eyes looking at me were gentle as if wanting to drown me. "Of course," I said in a small voice. "After all, she is the person you once cared about." Julian smiles. She won't smile mischievously, she won't act spoiled in my arms blatantly, and she certainly won't call me darling Julian softly like you. I was a bit angry. "Right, you just wish she did that to you, right?" "No." Julian held my hand. "I only like you doing that, the prerequisite for it all is you." I choked. The one attacking proactively was finally defeated. "You and she are two completely opposite people. When I entered the Imperial Academy, the first time I saw you, I thought this princess was truly beautiful, ice, clean, and jade, clean like that." I suddenly looked up at him, but he still lowered his eyes, looking at my hand. "You are naturally intelligent, whatever the Chancellor lectured, you only needed to hear once to remember. Clearly status noble, but personality very gentle, just a bit fond of teasing people. Changlet, I never thought I could marry you." Finally, he looked at me, his face appeared a layer of light red again. "Sometimes I don't know how to resist your enthusiasm and love. People who have been cold for too long, when suddenly contact with fire, will fear being burned. Every day after getting married, I was like a person who had never eaten sugar falling into a honey jar." Julian probed, hugging me. "I completely have no way with you, you just need to act spoiled once and I want to give you everything. Don't ignore me, okay?" Julian's voice even had a bit of grievance. "I can't bear it when you treat me like that, I will be very sad." I didn't return his hug. I softly asked, "So what about the person in your heart?" "Are you still bringing this up? You made me cry and I was just confused." Julian placed my hand on his chest. "But when you cry, it hurts right here." I hugged his neck, our faces pressed together. "Who is the person in your heart?" "It's you." Julian tilted his head, kissing my cheek, sighing satisfied like a thirsty person seeing an oasis. "You are the person on the tip of my heart." We said nothing more, hugging each other with all our strength. The sound of our heartbeats at this moment merged into one. In the gradually rising warmth of the other party, I suddenly thought, turns out touch starvation can also be contagious. Gradually approaching the cold winter, the first snow fell. The plum garden in the front yard was immediately covered with snow. In the cold wind, red plums proudly bloomed, their cold scent seeping into people's hearts. Outside the door, a servant was sweeping snow. Julian had left the capital to suppress bandits for over a month, counting the days. He was also about to return. I was practicing calligraphy in my room when a maid announced, "Princess Sarah Chu is waiting in the guest room in the front yard." Sarah Chu, the bride of Vice General Chen, Julian's subordinate, and also the person once in Julian's heart. I put on a coat, walking to the guest room. The woman sitting hurriedly stood up, bowing to the princess. "Please sit." I laughed and said, "Sorry to trouble you running here once." 2 years later, the new emperor sat firmly on the throne. He wanted to restore the female official system, helping manage the affairs of the 6 palaces and teaching concubines, thereby sharing the power of the remaining eunuchs from the previous dynasty. In the palace, they were very short of female doctors. Sarah's personality was frugal with words, she didn't even want to do basic social interaction. Looking like that, she was indeed very suitable to work in the palace. I went straight to the point. When we finished talking, looked back, the sky was already more than half dark. The maid poured more tea. I stretched once. "Main business finished. Now we can talk a little about family affairs." Sarah was a bit cold on the outside but hot on the inside. Talking for 2 hours, she seemed more used to me. She looked at the jade string I was fondling in my hand and suddenly smiled. "The princess is indeed like the rumors. Appearance beautiful, natural talent superior." I was stunned. She said again, "Very matching with Commandant Chen." I burst out laughing. My Julian still said he never revealed a bit of affection to you. Originally no affection, how can he reveal it? Sarah looked at my surprised eyes and smiled. My father once saved Commandant Chen's life, so I call him World Brother. When my father passed away, he entrusted me to him. I hold only the respect for an older brother toward the commandant. The commandant toward me also only has affection for a younger sister. Sarah said nothing more, standing up to bid farewell. I am very satisfied with my current life. I put down the teacup intending to send her off, but suddenly felt nauseous. I covered my mouth. Sarah raised her eyebrows. Let me check the princess's pulse. The maids' faces were full of worry, intending to step forward to stop her, but the ends of her eyebrows revealed joy. Snow fell heavier, weighing down the tilting plum branches. I sat before the desk writing a memorial about the female official system for my emperor brother. Ever since checking my pulse, the maids in the whole room viewed me as fragile porcelain to be protected, occasionally coming and calling me to rest. I hummed in passing, but suddenly heard a servant in the courtyard laughing and running in. Young master returned to the residence. I put on my coat and went out immediately. The maids worriedly cried out, outside is big snow, princess must be careful of her body. I acted like I didn't hear, lifting my skirt, running slowly, the cold wind mixed with the cold plum scent. I crossed the bridge, seeing a group of people quickly coming. The man leading saw my shadow then stopped a bit. Immediately, he quickly ran towards me. I laughed, throwing myself into Julian's arms. Cold air and familiar cold scent surrounded me. Julian spoke both fast and urgently, pulling his cloak to cover the wind for me. Big snow like this, running out for what? Then what? I wasn't afraid of him. In a soft voice, I said, I miss you. My Julian's anger was gone, choked for words. He carried me horizontally, lifting his legs and walking straight to Frost-Dew Courtyard. I hugged his neck, whispering in his ear, when we return, I will tell you good news. Julian chuckled. I hummed. Now say, afraid you get too excited and lose face. The cold moon was like frost, snow was flying and fluttering. The corridor left footprints then quickly covered them. Plum tree shadows were crooked and mottled, plum flowers in lovers' whispers gradually flew far with the wind. Snow covered the mountain, heaven and earth were white, only our love was hot. This story illustrates that true love is a pursuit requiring both courage and vulnerability. Luna Lin teaches us that happiness isn't merely destiny, but a choice to be seized. By persistently melting In's icy defenses with wit and warmth, she proves that a strong woman defines her own fate. Ultimately, their journey reminds us that the profoundest connection creates a sanctuary where two souls heal one another, turning a cold world into a place where only love remains fervently hot. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.